early witches were said to be people who called upon demons or the devil and made a pact with them in exchange for supernatural powers. Obviously, over the years the image of a witch has changed, but for today's video, let's look at some of these so-called evil witches. From witches that traded their soul in return for a better life, to others that used the devil for revenge. Let's talk about this and more only in today's video. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to Top 5. I'm your host Lindsay Ivan, and today we are looking at the top 5 scary witches that made a deal with the devil. If you like this video, then smash that like button. If you don't like this video, then still smash that like button. Obviously subscribe to our channel. Now we'll get on with the video. Starting off this countdown, we have the North Berwick witches. North Berwick is a small town in Scotland where some of the most brutal and horrific witch trials took place. It all started during the reign of King James VI. While on his way to get his new bride in 1589, he encountered a series of disastrous storms. In fact, the storms were so bad that he was forced to head back home. He immediately thought that the storms were the work of witches. It didn't help that back then a rumor had started that a witch had sailed out on the River Forth to conjure up some storms. So from then on, King James was dead set on finding these witches. In fact, 70 to 200 women were accused of being witches. Most of them were tortured and then executed. Now, apparently during these trials, he did come across a number of women that admitted to being witches. They claimed that they had all made deals with the devil and were now under his command. They also claimed that they would use one of the churches there to hold their covens. They even said that this was the place where they had summoned the devil himself. In fact, this church was located right on the seafront, so James was like, aha! The perfect place to conjure up storms. All of you are guilty. As a result, these witches were strangled and then burnt at the stake. In our fourth spot today, we have Sabrina Spellman. Although she's a fictional character, Sabrina still deserves a spot on today's list. Without too many spoilers, the show The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is about Sabrina, a teenage witch who on her 16th birthday has to sign her name in the Book of the Beast. Upon doing so, she makes a deal with Satan. She basically gives herself to him in exchange for magical powers. At first, Sabrina refused to do so because she didn't want to give up her mortal life, but later on she was forced into doing it in order to stop a number of evil forces that were murdering many of the townsfolk. Once she signed the book, she is forced to do Satan's bidding. She has to basically bow down to him and do whatever he instructs her to do. In return, Sabrina's magic became even stronger. In fact, she became the 4th witch in all of history to summon demonic blue hellfire, which was then used in order to fight off the Greendale 13. And for her to do that as a relatively new witch is very impressive. Later on in the show, we also realize that Miss Wardwell is evil and is using Sabrina so she can become the Queen of Hell. Sabrina's destiny took a dark shift as soon as she made a deal with the Dark Lord. Although all the witches in the series have signed this book, the Dark Lord specifically needed Sabrina to sign it. Her destiny is far more different than the other witches in the show. Have you guys watched the show? Let me know in the comments below. Honestly, I did, but after season 2, I couldn't anymore. Let me know your thoughts though.
Number 5. Julie Brown. Our first witch today on the list of which witch is Julie Brown, legendary voodoo priestess of the swamps. New Orleans is filled to bursting with two things: the most wondrous advancements in soul food and gumbo technology on the planet, and ghost stories. There's a whole lot of voodoo to go around in Louisiana, and in Manchac they say there's the ghost of an old voodoo priestess named Julie Brown. The story of Julie Brown is an unnerving one. I would certainly hope so, otherwise it wouldn't be on this list. She was said to be reclusive, would sit on the porch of her swamp shack and spend the day cackling, predicting the demise of nearby towns and its residents, singing twisted songs about her death and the apocalypse and the end of days. Despite the fact that she was a kooky old lady singing songs about the apocalypse on her front steps, locals actually feared her and treated her as an oracle and a prophet, and were very nervous of wronging her just in case she placed a hex on them, which, you know, is reasonable. You should always treat everyone you meet with kindness just in case they turn out to be a witch who can hex you. The prediction she's most known for, besides one bizarre correct prediction about the 1994 Super Bowl Cowboys at Bills game, was her threatening prediction in 1915, where Julie Brown would cackle over and over and over that she was going to die and take everyone with her. She chanted this again and again until her death. On her funeral, a hurricane hit the town, decimating 3 villages and taking countless lives. Julie is said to be buried in the swamp, and locals believe it was her spirit that caused the hurricane. And if you happen to be passing through Manchac, just pay your respects to Miss Julie Brown. Like I said, you never know what kind of secrets somebody has. And if you're looking for more stories about witches, or really any kind of urban legend, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. I'm not kidding. If you can think it up, there's pretty good odds we've done 2 to 3 videos on it. We got something scary for everything under the sun and above it. So hit subscribe. Please make sure you hit that little bell so you don't miss a single scream, but do that after this video because I got 4 more witch stories coming up for you right now. And wouldn't you know it, the next one's about a bell. Number 4, the Bell Witch. In the 1800s, a farmer going by the name of John Bell moved his family to picturesque Adams, Tennessee, onto a beautiful 300-acre farm, little slice of American pie. Bell quickly became a figurehead of the community, respected by many, and became a local leader at the town church. For the Bell family, things were the brightest they've ever been. They were living the dream and ringing in good fortune. I was trying to make a Bell pun work there. There's probably a better one. Things wouldn't be good for long, and they'd find themselves in a nightmare shortly. By 1817, strange, inexplicable things started to occur all around the farmstead. John Bell found a strange animal on the farmstead, a mutant hybrid that resembled a grotesque mix between a dog and a rabbit. I know that sounds like it would be cute, but I think if you get the wrong parts of both, that's just going to turn out to be a very, very ugly animal. I think dog, rabbit ears, pretty cute. Maybe like dog, rabbit face, dog, rabbit body. I don't know. Mess. Anyway, it was a disgusting thing. The younger members of the Bell family would wake up covered in red scratches all over their bodies at all hours of the day. The family would hear faint whispering and singing that sounded like an old woman singing hymns. Most tragic is the Bells found a mysterious vial of liquid inside their home that no one could explain or understand. Nervous about what it was, the Bells offered the mystery liquid to their cat, which passed almost immediately. Rest in peace, Bell cat, taken too soon, undeservedly. You didn't deserve to be an experiment for them. For 3 long years, the Bell family was tormented by a mysterious entity that would later become known as the Bell Witch, after the mysterious old woman's humming and singing. In 1820, John Bell quickly grew extremely ill, quickly descending in his health, and would pass away later. At his funeral, the mourners complained they could all hear the laughing of an old woman, mocking and singing the fate of the late John Bell. The farm became a haunted attraction, where it still is to this day, and it even caught the attention of President Andrew Jackson, who in 1819, a year before Mr. Bell's passing, visited to see if legends of the witch were real. Allegedly. As soon as his carriage arrived at the property, the horses refused to budge anymore. The animals can always tell.
Kicking us off in 5th place, we have Tatuba, one of the first women to be accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials of 1692 to 93. It is believed that she was taken from her tribe and forced into slavery in Barbados, where she learned her skills in witchcraft from mistresses and other slaves. When the head of her plantation passed, she was inherited by Minister Samuel Parris and was then brought to Salem, Massachusetts. Tatuba was accused of practicing witchcraft by a young woman, Abigail Williams and Elizabeth Parris, who also happened to be the daughter of her owner. The girls had been showing signs of being bewitched, and it was believed that Tatuba told the girls tales of voodoo and witchcraft prior to said accusations. A neighbor of the Parris family, Mary Sibley, recommended a witch's cake be baked to reveal the names of the witches, and instructed Tatuba to bake a rye cake with the victim's urine and feed the cake to a dog. Dogs were believed to support witches and their supernatural powers by following the witch's requests. When the symptoms shown by the young woman did not pass, this was shown as evidence that Tatuba possessed the powers of witchcraft. She was allowed to speak in court, becoming the first person to confess to practicing witchcraft in Salem in March of 1962. She also confessed to speaking with the devil, stating that he ordered her to worship him and hurt the children of the village, along with discussing tales of black dogs, hogs, a yellow bird, red and black rats, cats, a fox, and a wolf that she had cursed. She was sent to jail in Boston to await trial and punishment on March 7, eventually stuck in jail until being sold to an unknown person for the price of her jail fees that Samuel had refused to pay. Coming in 4th, Moll Dyer, one of the witches that inspired the Blair Witch Project. Residing in Leonardtown, Maryland, her origins are clouded in mystery, the most popular theory being that she was a noblewoman escaping an unsavory past. Taking up an isolated residence outside of town limits, she developed a reputation as a skilled herbalist. Those skills, combined with her unknown past and secluded lifestyle, planted the suspicion of witchcraft in villagers' heads. In the winter of 1697, the weather was so harsh that many crops failed, and a deadly plague swept through the town. It is believed that these were revenge from Moll, after the townspeople had been blaming her for every misfortune and hardship they faced. A meeting was held amongst town vigilantes, and they decided to form a mob to run her out of town. They set fire to her cottage in the dark of night, and Moll ran until her legs gave out, kneeling by a large rock. She raised her hand to the sky, calling down a further curse to the townspeople, and eventually froze to that same rock, leaving her handprint as a notice of her final act. The boulder has since been preserved as a landmark, and even though the handprint is no longer clearly visible, visitors have reported feeling profoundly uncomfortable or experiencing terrible aches and pains around it, and cameras have been known to malfunction in its presence. On the coldest nights of the year, people have reported seeing a woman with long white hair and wearing a white dress walking through the fields and woods near the town.
A subscriber actually brought this next witch to my attention, so I thought I would include it in today's video, and hopefully I pronounced the name right, okay? So this witch is a shape-shifting evil spirit. It's not just a witch though. It can also transform itself into a vampire, a werebeast, and a ghoul. But unlike normal vampires, this creature can go out during the day and they aren't harmed by the sunlight, and they don't also sparkle. During the day though, they are often seen with bloodshot eyes because they just spent the entire night searching for houses that are holding wakes so that they can then go in and then steal the bodies and then eat them. No need to worry though, they don't attack during the day, that's when they're at their weakest. Plus, they only attack in the darkness because that's when they believe that God is asleep. But when they do hunt, they go after the young and feast on their hearts and livers. In fact, they have this thing that comes out of their mouth and then can reach into a mother's womb to suck the baby out of them while the mother is asleep. Isn't that horrifying? It is. But wait, it gets worse. Apparently humans can choose to turn into this creature if they so desire. To do this, they have to tie a fertilized chicken egg to their stomach. The chick will then pass through their flesh, and once this happens, they have to bury the shell in a bamboo tube with coconut oil and chicken poop. After that is all complete, they will gain the powers of this monster. And it sounds like I just made that all up, but I swear that's part of the legend. What's horrifying is that this witch moves quickly and silently. They are super tiny so that they can hide behind things with ease, so you'll never be able to hear or see them coming. Now, these witches are said to be extremely wicked. If you ever cross one, they'll make sure you will pay. They'll put a curse on you so that bones or insects will come out of your bodily orifices. Like imagine just sitting there and then all of a sudden a spider crawls out of your eye, or you start coughing up bones. Yeah, no thank you. That's why these witches are so highly feared. Coming in at number 2, we have the Bell Witch. This is one of the creepiest stories out there because it involves a real-life witch and a real-life curse. So it all started back in the early 1800s with a man named John Bell. Now John lived in a Tennessee farmhouse with his family. All was going well until one day he saw this weird creature. He described it as a dog-like creature, but with a rabbit's head. He tried to shoot at it, but nothing happened. Then John's daughter Betsy started to witness freaky things as well. In fact, on a number of occasions she was attacked by an unseen force, as she described it. Then other weird spooky things would happen, like they would hear chains being dragged through the house, or gulping and choking sounds and scratching at their bedposts. Finally, after months of tormenting, the entity finally spoke to them. Turns out that they were being haunted by their former neighbor, Kate Batts, who was actually a witch. She was dead set on destroying the family, especially John. She wanted to kill him. She never said why though, and I want to know why. Over the next 3 years, Kate tormented the entire family daily. She cast a number of spells on John from her grave. As time went on, John actually became weaker and weaker, until 1829 when he was found dead with a small vial of liquid near him. Apparently Kate, the Bell Witch, gave John this poison and he took his life. After his death, Kate stopped tormenting the family. So again, I want to know, what did John do to Kate to make her come for him? Like seriously, I'd never want to get on her bad side. And And in our number 1 spot today we have the Chedipe. The Chedipe is this creepy witch slash vampire creature from India. Legend goes that this creature is formed after a woman passes away during childbirth or after a woman takes their own life. You know the succubus demon? The demon that presents itself to men during sleep and tries to have their way with them and then can kill them? Well, this is the Indian equivalent to the succubus demon. This witch rides on a tiger during the night. She then sneaks into your home without disturbing anyone and attacks men in their sleep. She will then suck the life out of them through their toes. Yeah, you heard me, their toes. I don't know why she wants those hairy stinky things near her face. Don't ask me. Anyways, some versions of this legend say that she has the power to change her form. She can transform into a tiger with all tiger features except one human leg. She also has hypnotic powers. She can cast a spell on the entire household so that everyone is in a trance-like state and won't wake up upon her entering. That's how she can come and go with ease. Now, this witch is so powerful that she can come after the strongest of men. And just like the succubus demon, she won't kill the man in one night. So she will revisit the house over and over again, slowly draining the life out of the man. She draws out his death with the men falling weaker and weaker and not knowing what's causing it. Eventually he will grow so sick and pass away. Coming in at number 3 we have Agnes Waterhouse. Agnes Waterhouse, otherwise known as Mother Waterhouse, was the first woman in England to be executed for witchcraft. Agnes confessed to being a witch and having a familiar named Satan, which was her cat. Later on, the cat apparently took the form of a toad. The familiar originally belonged to her friend and fellow witch Elizabeth Frances, but was later passed along to her. Furthermore, apparently Agnes would use her sorcery for evil. In 1566, she used her witchcraft to try and cause illness to a man named William Fine, and he was not so fine. After that, she used her powers to kill her enemies' livestock and as well as cause them illness. And lastly, she also tried to kill her husband using her powers. In fact, at her trial, one of her neighbors, a 12-year-old girl named Agnes Brown, came forward and testified against her. She claimed that she was visited by a demon dog under the control of Agnes Waterhouse. So according to the girl, one day she was visited by this demon that looked like a black dog with a face of an ape with a short tail, a set of horns, and a silver whistle around its neck. The demon dog appeared at her home and asked for some butter. She refused, and apparently later that day he returned with a knife and threatened to kill her. She said that he was going to thrust his knife in her heart and kill her. When the girl bravely asked to send him, the dog just turned his head toward Waterhouse's home. On July 29, 1566, Agnes Waterhouse was executed. Before doing so, she repented and begged God for forgiveness. She also did admit that she was sending her familiar to hurt and damage her neighbor's goods. But her neighbor, a tailor named Wardall, had such strong faith that the familiar was unable to mess with him. In the end, Agnes was hanged for her crimes. Moving on at number 2, we have Elizabeth Frances. So Elizabeth Frances was friends with Agnes Waterhouse. Some even say that they were sisters. I don't know. But she was accused around the same time that Agnes was. She was the original owner of Satan, the white spotted cat, and her familiar. According to Frances, she received the cat from her grandmother, who was also a witch. Her grandmother, in fact, was the person who taught her all about witchcraft when she was only 12 years old. According to Elizabeth, her cat would speak to her in a strange hollow voice and also would do anything in exchange for a drop of blood, which is why they could get him to do all of their dark bidding for them. During trial, Elizabeth confessed to stealing sheep and killing a number of people, including a man named Andrew Biles. Andrew refused to marry Elizabeth after she became pregnant with his child, so she killed him. Later on, her familiar told her to make a certain concoction of herbs and to drink it, and that would terminate her pregnancy. She did, and it worked. Not only that, but when Frances finally married, she got her familiar to kill her husband and her daughter. Agnes also confessed to using her powers and familiar to kill one of her own pigs to see, what it could do. And then she also killed her neighbor's cows and geese after they got in an argument. She got in an argument with the neighbor, not with the cows and geese, thought I should clarify. As I said before, the cat eventually turned to a toad on its own. So Frances was the first witch to be accused, and then she was the one who told everyone about Agnes in order to get a lighter sentence. So Elizabeth wasn't killed right off the bat. But 13 years later, she was accused again, and that's when she was killed for witchcraft. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Laurie Cabot. The story of Laurie Cabot is one that still blows my mind to this day. So Laurie is the high priestess of the Salem Coven. She is well known among modern day witches. Now, Laurie would only ever use her powers for good and to help people. In fact, she was psychic, and she would use her psychic abilities in order to help police solve a number of crimes. The first time being during the disappearance and death of Martha Brailsford. So back in 1991, two people from Salem were reported missing. That was Martha Brailsford and her neighbor Tom Mamoni. Eventually Tom returned home and said that the two were sailing when Martha fell off the boat after being hit by a rogue wave. So police began searching the bay for Martha, but they were unsuccessful. That's when one of the investigators who knew about Laurie and her abilities reached out to her for her help. Using just Martha's name, location, and birth, she was able to tune in and locate her. Laurie then said she got visions of Tom trying to make advances on Martha, but Martha was not into it. When she rejected him, he dragged her to the side of the boat and struck her head. He then put weights on her hips and attached an anchor to her feet and tossed her overboard. She even saw exactly where in the water Martha was. And guess what? She was right about all of that. A local fisherman ended up finding her body in the location that Laurie had said, and Martha did indeed have anchors and weights attached to her body. When Martha's body was located, Tom fled, and so Laurie was once again asked for help, but this time locating Tom. She once again tuned in and got a vision of Tom in a cabin, and got a vibe he was on his way to cross into Canada. Not only that, but Laurie performed a binding spell on Tom to make sure he would do something stupid so that he would get caught. Well, 3 days later, police found the cabin Tom was staying in, and it was in a small town near the Canadian border. They found the cabin because Tom made a stupid mistake. He parked his car near the cabin and he left the lights on. Neighbors called the cops because they didn't recognize the car and they knew the neighbors were out of town. Isn't that crazy? Round of applause for Laurie.
In at number 3, Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau was born in early 1800 and she was a Louisiana practitioner of voodoo and is known as the Voodoo Witch of New Orleans. She was a dedicated practitioner of voodoo as well as being a healer and herbalist, and is one of the most well-known practitioners of the voodoo art and culture. Marie didn't take long to dominate the voodoo culture and society in New Orleans areas and being named the Queen of Voodoo. During her time practicing the art of voodoo, she would perform her services in such places like her home on St. Anne Street within Ghost Square and at Lake Pontchartrain, but it's unknown why she chose only these locations to perform her services. Many of her followers would call her for help with many things like family disputes, health, finances, and many other things. Once she was established in the art of voodoo, Marie opened her own beauty parlor where she worked as a hairdresser for wealthy families in New Orleans. It's believed that the occult part of her magic mixed Roman Catholic saints with African spirits and Native American spiritualism. Marie was also said to have owned a snake and named it Zombie after an African god. It is rumored that her magic was supported by a network of informants that she developed while working as a hairdresser in prominent white households. Marie excelled at obtaining inside information on her wealthy patrons by instilling fear in their servants, whom she either paid off or cured their mysterious ailments, and it was proven that she owned 7 slaves at one time. Marie was known to visit prisons to get death row prisoners ready for their execution, but she often would poison them herself after praying with them. The Queen of Voodoo died in 1881 at the age of 79, but she remains a legend today and is often referred to as one of the best to ever do it. Many famous musicians have written songs about or referring to Marie Laveau, and fun fact, in 1982 the famous punk rock band The Misfits were arrested and accused of attempting to exhume Marie from her grave after a local concert. In at 2 we have Moll Dyer. If you've seen the horror movie The Blair Witch Project, then you may already be familiar with the legend of the infamous Moll Dyer. She was a legendary 17th century resident of Leonardtown, Maryland, who was said to be a witch and accused of witchcraft and chased out of her home by the local townsfolk on a winter night. Her body was found a few days later, partially frozen to a large stone in the town of Allstate. It's believed that the rock itself is cursed and people that go near it will experience dizziness and fainting. The legendary rock is located on the grounds of Tudor Hall, where the Historical Society has its headquarters. It is said that her spirit still haunts the land to this day, looking for the men who forced her from her home before her death. The land near her cabin is said to be cursed, never able to grow crops, and an unusual number of lightning strikes have been recorded near her home. A road 3 miles south of Leonardtown was named after her and is now known as Moll Dyer Road, along with the creek which parallels the road being named Moll Dyer's Run. A man who was hunting along the run in 1970 reported seeing a very dense fog patch, cylindrical in shape, and the light stretched 8 inches in length and crossed the stream, and when went east, moving across the wind instead with the wind, and then it turned and went south, and it happened not once but twice. Moll Dyer was one of the historical figures that inspired the character in the Blair Witch Project, and she is the most well-known and famous witch in Maryland. The story of Moll has also been featured in the show American Supernatural in 2014, has inspired multiple books, and even in a Halloween ballet performance named The Legend of the Witch, performed from 1999 to 2006 in Maryland. In at number 1 we have Dion Fortune. Born Violet Mary Firth in 1890 in North Wales, Dion Fortune was a British occultist and author and said to be a modern-day witch. She wrote often about the occult in both fiction and both non-fictional stories. Dion possessed many abilities like contacting the dead, magical powers, and often had vision from her so-called past lives. Once she recalled having visions at the age of 4 of Atlantis, and she believed that was one of her past lives. In 1924 she founded the Fraternity of the Inner Light, a magical society dealing with religious philosophy and alternative realities. The fraternity's rituals were carried out under dim light, with Dion claiming bright light disperses etheric forces. A light would be placed on the altar while incense was burned, and the members would begin walking around the room chanting with the intent of building a psychic force. Next, the cosmic entities would be invoked, with the members believing that these entities would manifest in astral form and interact with the chosen ones. The magical principles on which her fraternity were based were adapted from the late 19th century Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, with other influences coming from Theosophy and Christian Science. The magical ceremonies performed by Dion's group were placed into 2 categories: initiation, in which the candidate was introduced to magical forces, and evocation, where these forces were manipulated for a given purpose. Dion died in 1924, leaving behind her magical society, which has survived to this day. Her novels in particular influenced on later occult and modern pagan groups such as Wicca. Author Ronald Hutton wrote a book called The Triumph of the Moon, A History of Modern Pagan Witchcraft, considers her the foremost female figure of British occultism. She is recognized by many as one of the most significant occultists and ceremonial magicians of the early 20th century. Coming in at number 3 we have Merga Bien. Merga Bien was a German woman convicted of witchcraft and perhaps the most famous of the victims in the Fulda witch trials in 1603 to 1605. Merga was born in the city of Fulda, and she'd been married a total of 3 times and was the heiress of her first 2 husbands. In 1588 she had married her final husband, Lassis Bgita, and moved to the city, but eventually returned after an apparent conflict with her husband's employer. At the time, Prince Abbot Balthasar von Dernbach, who had returned to power in 1602 after a long exile, ordered an immediate investigation of witchcraft in the city, after multiple reports and sightings. While in power, there were over 200 people who were executed for witchcraft in witch trials that lasted until his death in 1605. In March of 1603, the investigations resulted in the first wave of arrests in the city. On June 19th, Marga was arrested and put into jail after signs of being involved with the devil and having supernatural abilities. Her current husband pointed out she was pregnant, but still that did not matter. It was actually believed that her current pregnancy was the result of intercourse with the devil himself. While in jail, she confessed to the murder of her second husband and her children with him, and one of the member of her husband's employers, and that she had taken part in the Sabbath of Satan. Bien was convicted of witchcraft soon after her confession, when it was burnt alive at the stake in Fulda in late 1603, and to this day she is still known as being one of the most dominant witches in Germany. In at number 2 we have Marlin Mutter. Marlin Mutter was a Swedish witch from 1613 to 1676. She is known as one of the few people in Sweden confirmed to have been executed by burning for witchcraft, and the only one to be executed by this method during the famous witch hunt known as the Great Noise in Sweden during 1668 to 1676, which had ended with her execution. Since 1668, a national witch hunt raged throughout Sweden ever since the accusation of Marit Jonsdotter, resulting in the establishment of witch commissions around the nation and execution of around 280 people. The accused showed signs of being witches, along with abducting children to the witches' Sabbath of Satan in Blockula. Marlin Mutter was among the accused, and not much is known about her background, but what we do know is that she had been married a couple of times and had 2 daughters with her first husband, Eric Nilsson. She was also known to work as a midwife and was actually hired by a woman named Anna Zippel, who actually accused of witchcraft as well and had been executed for being a witch. It's later found that Anna taught Marlin the ways of witchcraft and sorcery. In 1676, Marlin was reported for witchcraft by her 19-year-old daughter Maria. Marlin was brought to trial for the accusation as her daughter Maria testified against her mother, stating that she had taken her and several other children to Satan in Blockula, and that Satan himself, known to the children as the Mean One, appeared in court, with horns standing next to her mother, holding her skirt, and whispered in her ear never to confess. Marlin was ordered by the court to fall on her knees and pray, or be able to confess, but she didn't obey. Along with Maria, 10-year-old and 7-year-old both testified to have been abducted by Marlin to Blockula to see Satan. A woman named Gertrude also testified against Marlin, stating that she had abducted her family to Satan 16 times and even another 14 times while she was in prison. Also, she had seen her family endure fits while being supernaturally beaten by Marlin from prison. Marlin's firm denial of these crimes was seen as a sign that the devil assisted the witch to withstand interrogations. Finally, in July of 1676, Marlin was found guilty and sentenced to be executed. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Salem witches. The most well-known cases of witches in history, and you may have heard of them, are the witches from Salem. The Salem witch trials of 1692 are still widely talked about today. Witchcraft scared a lot of people throughout history. The thought of people possessing supernatural powers was widely talked about, and many people were accused and labelled as witches. The Salem witch trials in particular were a series of hearings and prosecutions of people who were accused of witchcraft in colonial Massachusetts between February 1692 and May 1693. More than 200 people were accused of possessing such abilities. A total of 30 people were found guilty, and 19 of them were executed by hanging. Among the 19 killed were 14 women and 5 men. Also, of the 200 accused, many were sent to jail, and at least 5 of them died there. Arrests were made in numerous other towns beyond Salem, like in Andover and Topsfield. The trials for the so-called capital crime were conducted by the Court of Oyer and Terminer in 1692, and by a Superior Court of Judicature in 1693. Both were held in Salem, where the mass hangings took place. This was the deadliest witch hunt in the history of colonial North America. Only 14 women and 2 men have been executed in Massachusetts and Connecticut during the 17th century who had been accused of witchcraft. Among the accused were Elizabeth Hubbard and also Dorothy Good, who were also accused of witchcraft. In February of 1692, Betty Parris and her cousin Abigail Williams, who were the daughter and niece of a respected Reverend Samuel Parris, started acting strangely, and would have fits described as beyond the power of epileptic fits or natural disease to affect by Minister John Hale. The girls screamed through things around the room, uttered strange sounds, crawled under furniture, and contorted themselves into odd positions according to eyewitness accounts. The girls also complained of being pinched and pricked with pins, but when they went to a doctor, he could find no physical evidence of any ailment on either girl. After the news of these odd behaviors started spreading around Salem, other young girls began experiencing similar behaviors. No one had any idea of where these strange behaviors were coming from, or why the girls were acting in such an odd way. Massachusetts was a very religious town back then, and these girls were acting as if an ungodly being was inside of them. And so they had been accused of witchcraft, and many historians debate on how many of these 200 accused were actual witches, but some definitely were, and they had brought fear to the people of Salem.
Starting off this countdown, we have Julia Brown. Julia Brown was a well-known voodoo practitioner and witch in her small town in Louisiana. People knew her for her charms and her curses, as well as the creepy songs that she would sing on her porch with her guitar. In her community, people would come to her and she would perform a number of different rituals for them. That was until people started to take advantage of her, so she started to get back at them. When they came to her, she would scare them by telling them predictions like they're gonna die soon or bad things were coming for them. Then the locals were like, "Hey, what's going on with her?" Close to her death, Julia started to act strange. She would constantly sing songs about her death and how she would get revenge on the town. One song that she would sing goes as so: "When I die, I take the whole town with me. When I die, I take the whole town." Not a very cheery and upbeat song if you ask me. In fact, no one knew what she was talking about until the day that she passed away. On September 29, 1952, Julia passed away. On that day, the town came together for her funeral. Well, as they were lowering her casket into the ground, rain came down hard. This rain later turned into a disastrous hurricane that wipes out the entire town. So it's believed that before she left, she put a curse on the town, which is what she meant by "when I die, I'm taking the whole town with me." Over the years, a number of people have attempted to rebuild the town, but every time they do, it ends up getting destroyed again. Maybe her curse is real then. In our 4th spot today, we have Gerald Gardner. Gerald Gardner is often called the father of modern witchcraft, and that's due to the fact that he founded Wicca. Although technically he learned it from a group of people and then went on to just write about it, so they gave him credit for it. But Anyways, basically back in 1939 he said that one night he encountered a group of women who claimed to be witches. They stripped him of his clothes and put him in the middle of a ceremonial circle. The circle was lined with naked women, and they showed him their ways. From there, he learned briefly about Wicca and thought, hey, this is great, let's preserve this and make sure that everyone knows about it. In 1954, he actually created a book titled Witchcraft Today that teaches others how to embrace Wicca fully. He then went on and became obsessed with the occult. In fact, it's believed that a number of Wiccans and pagans were saved partly because of him. They could come out and be like, yeah, I'm a witch, without fear of being hanged or burned alive. To this day, he's one of the most relevant witches in history, but also one of the more controversial ones.
Coming in at number 5, we have Holda. Holda is a witch who is rumored to live deep within the forest, secluded from the rest of the world. It is said that if you get lost in the woods, it is usually due to the influence of Holda's magic. She influences children to wander off on their own so that she may trap them. She has also been known to offer magical favors to children who find her. She just requests in return they visit her again with their friends or siblings. Once Holda has captured and trapped the children, she will cook and consume them, leaving no evidence behind that they were ever there. If she doesn't eat the children herself, she will serve them to the next children who find her home as a sick punishment. It is believed that Holda once had a daughter. The daughter was evil and was using dark magic to hurt people, including the rest of Holda's family. When Holda lost everyone who she cared for, she destroyed her daughter to make sure she could never hurt anyone again. Since then, she has spent her days luring children to her and destroying them as she did her own daughter. So don't wander off if you're ever walking in the woods, and absolutely do not summon Holda, or you might notice kids going missing around your neighborhood. Coming in at number 4, we have Agatha Harkness. Agatha is one of the original witches from Salem, though she was not caught. She started as one of the lower witches of her coven, but quickly rose in the ranks amongst her fellow witches. It is said that she practices dark magic. Her mother was once one of the greatest witches. She was confronted by the rest of her coven for practicing dark magic, something that was not allowed. They attempted to destroy her for her crimes, but they did not realize how strong her power was. She drained the power from every other witch in the coven, including her mother, making her the most powerful witch in Salem. It is said that since then she has continued to practice her dark magic, never encountering a witch as powerful or as cunning as she is. She is an evil witch who can manipulate the minds of those around her to commit horrible acts. She is not someone who you would like to cross or make angry. She also has the ability to wipe the memories of those who she controls, meaning they don't even know that it was not their decision to commit their crimes. It is said she still resides in Salem, where her coven once called home. Although it is not clear where, there are a number of historical sites in Salem one could visit if looking for Agatha. If you did want to contact her for some dark reason, it does not come easy. You have to make a sacrifice for her to bother making an appearance. She requires a personal sacrifice of something that you love, whatever that may be for you. Maybe burning your childhood toy or something else you were attached to emotionally. If you do summon her, you might not get what you wanted. If she likes you, she might grant whatever you seek, but if not, you might unleash a great evil not only on yourself but back onto the world. I think it would be best for everyone that we leave Agatha to whatever realm she is currently hiding in.
Number 3, the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. Try saying that 5 times fast. The MMDM, or Liber Incantationum Exorcium et Fascinatum Variagum, is a 15th century grimoire manuscript. The text, composed in Latin, is largely concerned with demonology and necromancy. Richard Kiekeffer edited the text of the manuscript in 1998 under the title Forbidden Rites, a Necromancer's Manual of the 15th Century. Portions of the text in English translation are presented in Forbidden Rites as well, embedded with the author's essays and explanations on the Munich Manual in specific and grimoires in general. The Russian translation of this Latin grimoire was published in 2019, while the first English translation was published in only 2023. There was only one known surviving manuscript of the original Munich Manual, which is almost complete, except for the first 2 folios that describe the beginning of the first ritual. The rest of the grimoire contains complete instructions for the invocation of demons such as Satan, Lilith, Astaroth, and Samael, as well as the supposed attainment of favors and supernatural powers from them. Some of the spells allow for obtaining the love of a woman, achieving invisibility, acquiring wealth and treasures, or gaining knowledge. The text is accompanied by over 40 illustrations of magic circles and symbols to be used in the rituals. Page 130 to 133 of the text include a list of 11 demons, similar to the one from the Ars Goetia. Since there are only 11, I guess I could list them all off. So Count/Duke Barbarous, Duke Casson, President/Count Odious, King Curson, Duke Alugar, Prince Daob, President Volak, Duke Generan, Marquise Touvaries, President Hani, and Marquise Sucax. I promise I did my best with pronunciations today, folks. I'm a little sleepy. Most of the text is in Latin, with the exception of the 2 appended materials in German and Italian, which, hey, makes sense to me. Number 2, the Grimorium Verum. Yep, I've already mentioned it today. I know. The Grimorium Verum, which is Latin for true grimoire, is an 18th century grimoire attributed to one Alibek the Egyptian of Memphis, who wrote it in 1517. And like many of the other ones on today's list, it does claim a tradition originating with King Solomon. The grimoire is not a translation of an earlier work, with its original appearing in French or Italian in the mid-18th century, as noted already by A.E. Waite, who discussed the work in his book of ceremonial magic in 1911, stating the date specified in the title of the Grimorium Verum is undeniably fraudulent, since the work belongs to the middle of the 18th century and Memphis is Rome. One version of the grimoire was included as the Clavicles of King Solomon, Book 3, in one of the French manuscripts S. Al MacGregor Mathers incorporated in his version of the Key of Solomon, but it was omitted from the key with his explanation. At the end, there are some short extracts from the Grimorium Verum with the seals of evil spirits, which, as they do not belong to the Key of Solomon proper, I have not given. For evident classification of the key is in 2 books and no more. Now, Idris Shah also published some of it in The Secret Lore of Magic, Book of the Sorcerers, in 1957. Alrighty, time to break down all 4 books. So book 1 is described as concerning the characters of demons, particularly the superior spirits of Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth, while also including the many inferior spirits below them and their invoking sigils. Who wants to hear about what all the lesser spirits can do? So Claunek has the power to bring money to those who make a pact with them. Musisin has power over important people and politicians. Fremos has power over women. Klepoth can help you experience all sorts of dreams and visions. Kill can manifest dramatic situations and changes. Mersild has dominion over long and short distance travel. Klistert can create confusion or enlightenment, depending on what you want or need. Sirkad can make you see all sorts of natural and supernatural creatures. Hickpath can make a person think of you, no matter how far or distant they may be. Humotz can bring you any book you desire. Sigal will cause all sorts of prodigies to appear. Frucissiere can teach you the art of necromancy. Gouland causes all illnesses. Sergat can create every kind of opportunity for advancement. Morel can help you move about unseen. Fruitimiere prepares all kinds of feasts for you. Husi Taragaraz causes sleep in the case of some and insomnia in others. It tempted. I could use a good night's sleep. Book 2 is simply described as being of planetary hours, so I'll leave it up to y'all to interpret what you think that means. Book 3 is the preparation of the operator, or more simply put, how to prepare for summoning. Book 4 contains the Sanctum Regnum, called the Royalty of Spirits or the Little Key of Solomon, a most learned Hebraic necromancer and rabbi. This book contains various combinations of characters whereby the powers can be invoked or brought forth whensoever you may wish, each according to his faculty. Number 1, Shams al-Marif. So, Shams al-Marif, or Shams al-Marif Walata If al-Arif, is a 13th century grimoire centered on Arabic magic and claimed to be a manual for achieving esoteric spirituality. I apologize from the bottom of my heart if I butchered that pronunciation anyway. I promise I did practice. It was written by the scholar Ahmad al-Buni, who wrote it while living in Algeria, and he passed around 1225 Common Era. This book is a patchwork of bits and pieces of al-Buni's authentic works and texts by other authors. Scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah have criticized the book and labeled al-Buni as a deluded devil worshipper. Good to know that across all religions over time, some things never change. In terms of more modern examples, that was a common assumption from Ed and Lorraine Warren, probably the most famed demonologists of all time. Personally, I believe half of what they investigated was real, and the other half was them just making a living, which at the end of the day, I have to give some respect to. Well, minus viewing alternate lifestyles outside of Christianity as a sin. Pardon me, I got a little sidetracked here. In contemporary form, the book consists of 2 volumes, the Shams al-Marif al-Kubra and the Shams al-Ma'arif al-Sugra, with the former being the larger of the 2. The first few chapters introduce the reader to magic squares, and the combination of numbers in the alphabet that are believed to bring magical effect, which the author claims is the only way to communicate with jinn, angels, and spirits. The table of contents that were introduced in the later printed editions of the work contain a list of unnumbered chapters, which stretch to a number of 40. However, prior to the printing press and, various other standardizations, there were 3 independent volumes that circulated, each one differing in length. While being popular, it also carries a notorious reputation for being suppressed and banned from much of Islamic history, ergo how it found its way to our list today. However, it continues to persist in being read and studied up to the present day, despite its questionable veracity and negative implications. Some Sufi orders, such as the Things I Cannot Say order, have recognized its legitimacy and use as a compendium for the occult and hold it in high regard. Another title by the same author, the title having been translated to The Source of the Essentials of Wisdom, is considered its companion text. In terms of translations, although a formal translation into English hasn't happened yet, there have been numerous renditions of a few of the more popular rituals found within the main treatise, as well as those that lie in its accompanying text.
Starting off this countdown, we have Alice Goodridge. In 1597, Alice Goodridge was tried after it was discovered she had 2 small bloody holes on her stomach. It looked like she had cut the witch's mark out of her skin. They were described as great warts that appeared to have been sucked. They believed that the devil would create these marks on their body after sucking the witch's blood from them as a form of nourishment. Not only that, but Alice apparently had a mark behind her arm and a number of other marks towards the top of her shoulder. But Alice claimed that the wound on her stomach happened after she accidentally stabbed herself. So the officials got a doctor to look at her stomach wound to see if it was the witch's mark or an accidental stab wound. Well, the doctor said, and I quote, "was like to ha been so a long time, for it was not festered and seemed to be sucken." AKA it was not a new wound like she claimed it was, and it appeared as if someone was sucking on the wound, AKA the devil or demons. So poor Alice was tried as a witch. Now, how was she accused in the first place? Well, according to some articles I read from the archives, a young boy named Thomas Darling came forward claiming that he had been bewitched by Alice. How darling, get it? He became super ill and would have weird fits. Also, according to the boy, Alice sent her familiar Minnie to torment him. So that's why Alice was questioned and strip searched for a witch's mark. When they found several all over her body, she was killed. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. Moving on to number 4, we have Isabelle Adams. In 1707, during the witchcraft trials in Scotland, a woman named Isabelle Adams confessed that the devil had given her a mark. She claimed that in the fall she encountered a man with a hat wearing all black clothes. She engaged with the man and it turned out he was the devil and ended up kissing her. He then told her that in his service she could be as rich as she wanted to. So she decided to renounce her baptism and make a pact with the devil. Upon doing so, that's when she received the witch's mark or devil's mark. And surprisingly, after confessing this all, she wasn't even killed. She was actually freed, she just had to pay a fine. Starting off this countdown, we have John Reed. John Reed was one of the 7 witches tried in 1697 Scotland. When he was caught, persecutors found that he had a mark on his loin. John said that the devil had nipped him there and that it indeed was a witch's mark. John also confessed that he was in service with the devil. The devil promised him wealth and abundance, but in return, John belonged to the devil. But John revealed that the devil broke his promise and never did anything he said he was going to do. On top of that, John admitted to attending a number of meetings with other witches. He also admitted that he was responsible for the torment of Christian Shaw. Christian was an 11-year-old who claimed she encountered a pack of witches who then bullied her and stole her milk. He also admitted that they all drowned her in the local well. As a result of his confession, it was very clear that he was a witch and he was locked away in a cell. The next day though, he was found dead. He had hung himself in his cell with his own scarf. It was believed that this was the devil's work. The devil convinced him to take his own life because John exposed him. Within the following weeks, the other witches close to John took their own lives in their cell as well. Again, it's thought that the devil possessed them and killed them off one by one because he was pissed with them. In our 4th spot, we have Janet Howitt. Between 1661 to 1663, 44 people in Beaufort, Scotland were accused of witchcraft. 7 of those accused were executed. The fate of some of the others remain unclear. One of the main women was Helen Guthrie. She was not a nice lady at all. This woman murdered her own stepsister and the stepsister's children. But she was like, wait, I'll help you, and claimed that she was able to identify other witches just by looking at them. So she said she would help them in the witch hunt if they went easy on her. She then went on to make up elaborate stories of witches meeting up at graves and eating the flesh of other humans, etc. The more she made up and pointed fingers, the longer she got to live, and same with her daughter Janet Howitt. Janet was also accused of being a witch like her mom. In fact, she had a witch's mark on her shoulder. She said it was from the devil biting it. She also said that it hurt for so long until the devil visited her again and stroked her shoulder. When he did that, the pain immediately stopped. Now, Janet was imprisoned with the rest of the accused, but we don't know what happened to her. They held a trial for her and no one testified against her. Plus, they only had the mark on her shoulder as evidence. We truly don't know if young Janet was let go or sadly killed. What we do know is that her plea date was 1666, 4 years after her arrest, so she was in jail for quite some time.
Number 5 on this list is Goody Cole. Now, Goody Cole is a little interesting because today she is not a physical witch, but the ghost ghost of her former witch-like self. Back in the 1600s in Hampton in the United States, Goody Cole lived with her older husband at the time. Once 1656 rolled around though, she didn't live with him anymore. Goody Cole was arrested and found guilty of witchcraft. It was said that she had a mumbling habit, looked extremely witch-like, and also had some animal-related deaths tracked back to her in what would have been used for apparent rituals. It was also said that she was capable of turning herself into an animal and would often do so to disguise herself and trick others. When she was arrested, she was treated extremely poorly, often tortured, starved, and this whole process went on for years. After 6 years of this, she petitioned to be released so that she could support her husband who was close to death at the time. The court agreed that they would let her do this, but she had to pay a sizable fee that she obviously didn't have access to because she was in jail. Her husband eventually died alone without the support of his wife, something that was said to eat at Goody's conscience continually. Now the manner of Goody Cole's death is sort of up in the air. Some say that she was stabbed with a stake for being a witch, others say that she was finally released but she was so old that she died in her home alone soon after, whereas some people say that she just died in prison. But one thing's for certain, Goody Cole was so unhappy with the people of Hampton actually that she never left. Many people in the area have reported in the older parts of town that they still see a dark, shadowy figure resembling an old woman. A phantom all in white that stalks people through the streets and can be seen in the windows looking down upon you as you walk through the city. People believe that this witch won't cause you any harm, but her goal is to make you feel as ostracized as possible, the exact way that she was made to feel back when she was still living. Number 4 on this list are the Boo Hags. Typically associated with the haunting of the coastal plains of South Carolina, it should be noted that there's no reason to believe that they could only be limited to this area, but there has been a large amount of activity of them here. Now I should also note that the jury is still a little bit out on if these creatures are exclusively witches or exclusively vampires. I think that the truth of the matter is probably a horrifying mixture of both. Legend says that the Boo Hag needs to get sustenance from a person's breath, and that's how they sustain themselves. This action is somewhat similar to how the Dementors act in Harry Potter, but still with some notable differences. For starters, a Boo Hag is a fleshy creature that does not have any skin of its own. Therefore, it is simply a red tendon-esque humanoid being. Because they don't have any skin of their own, they will often steal the skin of their victims and fit it to their bodies until that skin inevitably deteriorates. The action of sucking someone's breath isn't as simple as my Harry Potter example either. Typically, once a Boo Hag finds a suitable victim, they will stalk that individual back to their home and wait until they're sleeping. Once they're passed out, the Boo Hag will break into their home and straddle the person who is asleep. This action is referred to by locals as a riding from a Boo Hag. Now, if the person wakes during this process and struggles, they will steal your skin and leave you for dead, but oftentimes you don't even realize that this is happening to you. They will suck your energy and it will put you into a deep catatonic-like state. After they've gotten their necessary energy, they'll leave you alone, and you'll wake the next morning feeling drowsy most likely, not even realizing that you were ridden from a Boo Hag.
Moving on, number 3, we have Elizabeth Jackson. The trial of Elizabeth Jackson was a pretty complex one. It seemed as if she was just an innocent woman whose neighbors wanted to get rid of her, so they created this elaborate story that she was a witch. So this took place in the mid-1600s. Elizabeth Jackson, or Elizabeth Howe, was accused of bewitching a 14-year-old girl named Mary Glover. At her trial, a woman named Elizabeth Burgess came forward being like, "Yeah, I witnessed her bewitch this poor young girl." Then she also claimed that she was visited by Jackson herself. During the visit, she was eating prunes when she wasn't able to swallow them, and then she threw up. So she believed that this was the result of Jackson putting a spell on her. She then went on saying that every time Jackson visited her, bad things would happen. One time she even claimed that Jackson put a spell on her. She said, and I quote, that she might cast up her heart, guts and all, adding, "Thou shortly shall have in thee an evil spirit too." The following night, Burgess claimed she was visited by a vision in the shape of a fox. The night after, she had a vision of like a scary shadow man. The third night, she was visited by another vision, just like Jackson promised in her curse. Then another child, Hannah Trumbull, started having weird fits and became ill. She claimed it felt like she was being pricked by pins and said it was the work of Elizabeth Jackson. A priest was eventually called to help Hannah, and while he was there, Hannah screamed out saying that Elizabeth was in the same room as them too, and that she was going in and out of the oven. no clue what that means, but everyone was like, so she's guilty, she's a witch. So there was a lot of evidence built up against Elizabeth. During her trial, she was searched and they apparently found marks all over her body. An article said, and I quote, "Under the hands of the woman, marks were found in diverse places of her body. These marks were determined to be unlikely to grow of any disease, but rather more like the marks which are described to be in witches' bodies." On July 19, 1692, she was executed by hanging. Dude, Old English is messed up. In our second spot today, we have Marie Lamont. In 1662, Marie Lamont was tried and confessed to being a witch. So this all went down during the reign of Charles II, just after the whole big witch craze that happened in the UK. Now, her case was unusual for one main reason. She was only 13 years old. But apparently she renounced her Christian faith and then got baptized by the devil. She even went on to confess to having intimate relations with the devil on multiple occasions. Apparently her and a number of other witches would meet up at night and would mingle with the devil. The devil would appear to them as a shape of a dark man with hooved feet. Other times he would appear as a brown dog. The group would then throw stones into the sea with the intention of hitting and sinking ships, all at the command of the devil. At her trial in 1662, she was accused of shape-shifting into a cat and using her magic to steal milk. This included placing a mug under the cow's udders and saying, "In God's name, God send us milk. God send it and lots of it." And apparently it worked. I don't know. Furthermore, when she was searched at her trial, they found a mark on the right side of her body. Marie claims that this was from the devil nipping at her. Due to all the evidence stacked up against her, she was found guilty and burned at the stake. And in our number one spot today, we have Annabelle Stewart. Annabelle Stewart was tried in 1678 Scotland after being accused of being a witch. But they didn't have much against her. Apparently, she was taught witchcraft by a local beggar, Catherine McTarget. Now, they thought she was a witch because she was a beggar and was greedy. When people would give her money, she would demand more. If people didn't give her money, she would threaten them and tell them that bad things were coming their way. Plus, when people did call her a witch, she never denied it. She just kind of went with the flow. So people thought she was one. Now, back to Annabelle. So they thought that Catherine was her teacher of witchcraft and then she was imprisoned. During her trial, it was revealed that she had a mark on her arm. She confessed that she received that mark from the devil. She was found guilty and she was going to be executed, but she was underage. So instead, they decided to fix her instead of kill her. They moved her to Glasgow and was looked after by ministers. There she would pray with them daily and follow their spiritual practices.
Number 3 on this list is the White Witch of the Rose Hall Plantation in Jamaica. The Rose Hall Plantation is near Montego Bay. However, the witch in question is the ghost of a witch named Annie Palmer, and Annie Palmer wasn't from Jamaica at all. In fact, Annie Palmer spent most of her life in Haiti. She was born there and lived there with her parents for quite some time until they sadly passed away due to yellow fever. Afterwards, she was adopted by a witch who wasn't shy in passing her gifts on to young Annie. Regularly practicing witchcraft and voodoo, Annie soon became a strong witch in her own right. After she grew up, she moved to Jamaica and married John Palmer, taking his last name. Now this is where things get a little bit crazy though. Annie murdered John Palmer. Then she got married again and murdered that husband. And then she got married again and murdered that husband. You'd think that these guys would have recognized that marrying Annie might not have been the best idea, but I guess love just conquers all. Annie didn't stop with her husbands though. She murdered countless slaves that worked on that plantation. This was right up until she was murdered herself by a slave named Taku. The people back then attempted to perform a voodoo ritual on this witch, not wanting to have her ever return again. However, it didn't work the way that they intended it to. The voodoo ritual actually trapped her at this location, and now she's said to be forever haunting the Rose Hall on Montego Bay. People have seen her ghost before, and they've heard screaming coming from nothing. The vision of a woman in white will appear sometimes, and it is said that if you stay at this plantation too long, then some deep misfortune will fall upon you or your family. So beware. Number 2 on this list is Jenny Greenteeth. Jenny Greenteeth is a witch in British folklore that is said to haunt the waters of Lancashire, Cheshire, and Shropshire. I know, it's a lot of shires. Jenny is a river witch and lives in the rivers of these areas looking for victims to drag down with her. As you'd imagine, with a name like Greenteeth, her appearance is pretty grotesque. Green algae-like hair, a wrinkled witchy face, skin that that is the same color as a bog and a weird, fleshy exterior, Jenny is certainly not a looker. But I suppose it doesn't matter a whole lot, as she uses the swamp like water and pond scum to mask her appearance so you can't see her beneath the filth. The origin of Jenny Greenteeth is still up for debate, but the bare bones of the tale are pretty consistent. Jenny was a girl in a local British town who was the victim to some heavy bullying. One day when she was at her job getting water from the well, somebody yelled at her that they hope she falls in and dies. Well, that's exactly what happened. Her spirit manifested as Jenny Greenteeth, this old hag who now haunts the waters in this area. Jenny is not simply a harmless witch either. She preys on people, specifically children that get too close to the water. Sometimes she will try to lure them towards the riverbank by calling out to them or singing a tune where no one can figure out where it's coming from. Now, this tactic is one that we've talked about on this channel before with the Utah water babies and is very successful. She lunges her hand out and grabs them, dragging them into the water where they will drown and never be seen again. This water witch is known by all the locals in the area, with everyone having some slightly different adaptations to the legend. General consensus though, if you hear someone singing from the rivers of Britain, don't go near it. Number 1 on this list is La Lechuza. La Lechuza is a witch based in Mexican folklore that is said to haunt the Mexican nights. I wish I could pinpoint the location down for you guys to be a specific region in Mexico, but this witch is sadly far too mobile for that. La Lechuza used to live in a small Mexican town and regularly practice witchcraft. Her intentions were foul though, and would regularly cause harm to others, whether that be to them directly or to their livelihood. The townsfolk, once they discovered that she was the cause of their misfortune, raided her home and viciously murdered her. They didn't kill her well enough though, because her spirit still clings to life to this day. Said to regularly take the form of an owl and fly throughout Mexico, La Lechuza is constantly on the hunt for food. Her preferred meal is young men. This bird is apparently massive, and once it sets its sights on you, it will be nearly impossible to escape. Some people have reported that she is so big that they've seen her run cars off of the road and eat her victims in the wreck. She also employs some other tactics instead of just brute force. Sometimes she will mask her voice as a baby and sit outside your door until you open it, and then she'll pounce. You may also hear the consistent racket of an owl howling in the night. Go and check your window to see what the commotion is and become this owl lady's dinner. Basically, she is a giant owl that you can't run from, you can't beat in a fight, and is also able to outwit you with some strange tactics. She haunts all of Mexico, and you just need to hope that if you were there, she doesn't pick you to be her next meal.
In our 3rd spot, we have the Witches of Huntingdon. The Witches of Huntingdon were several individuals in the UK who were found guilty of witchcraft. First, we have Elizabeth Weed. Apparently one night, 3 spirits came to her and told her to renounce God and make a blood pact with the devil. So she listened, and that's what she did. John Winnick also did the same, but only agreed to if the spirits would help him out financially. Others, including John Clark Jr., were also visited by these spirits and decided to also renounce God and make a deal with the devil. Out of the 9 people accused, 5 were found guilty and hanged. Well, John Clark knew that they were going to search everyone's body for their witch's mark, which they all had. So what did he do? He cut off his 3 days before he was searched. Literally gouged it out of his skin so that the mark was gone. But I'm kind of confused, because wouldn't that create another mark? I don't know, but I think he was let off the hook while he watched his friends be killed. He literally said, and I quote, "It was foolish to let the authorities find their marks. I cut off mine 3 days before I was searched." He then denied ever making a pact with the devil or being a witch, even though he was. Moving on to number 2, we have George Jacobs Sr. George Jacobs Sr. was an English colonist who was accused of witchcraft in 1692 during the Salem witch trials. George was quite the man around town. He had several run-ins with the law. He was known for having a violent temper, and in 1677 hit a man named John Tompkins Jr. 2 witnesses said, and I quote, "One blow, and if the latter had not held him by the arms, he would have struck him some more, he being in such a passion." Now, he was fined for this. Then in 1674 he was sued by his neighbor after he chased some of his horses into the river where they drowned. He argued that the horses were trespassing on his property, whereas others thought he just liked liked wreaking havoc on town. Fast forward several years later, George Jacobs Sr. and his son, George Jacobs Jr. and his daughter-in-law and granddaughter were all accused of witchcraft. Everyone got off except for Jacobs Sr., and that's because he had a witch's mark. His body was searched and they found what was described as 3 teats on Jacobs. It was thought that if a person had an extra nipple, that this was a sign that they were a witch. Why? Well, it was believed that the extra nipple or teat was from when the devil or some demons sucked the witch's blood as a form of nourishment. It was said that Jacobs Sr. had 3 of them. 1 in his mouth, 1 on his right shoulder blade, and 1 on his hip. Now, they weren't actually nipples though, it was just a 1/4 inch long fleshy thing protruding from his skin with a sharp point. They proceeded to stick pins in each of them to see what would happen. This was called the witch pricker. Apparently, if you are pricked and you don't have a reaction to getting pricked and you don't bleed, then you are a witch. Well, when they pricked each teat, Jacobs never reacted to it and he didn't even bleed. So he was found guilty on August 5th, 1692 and was sentenced to be hanged along with the other witches. And in our number 1 spot we have Pith Rio. Pith Rio was an alleged witch in Scotland during the early 1600s. When she was 12 years old, she claimed that she was approached by 2 men. One was dressed in all black, the other in green tartan. The man in green told her that if she followed his instructions, that she would be able to obtain magical powers. He told her to boil an egg and use the condensation from cooking the egg and take it and rub it on her eyes with unwashed hands. Sounds like an eye infection to me. He said that this would give her the powers to see and know everything that she wanted. So she followed his instructions and bam, it actually worked. So now I kind of want to go home and try it. I don't know, maybe it will work. And she actually developed clairvoyant skills. When Elspeth was older, she was visited again by the men. This time it was only the man in black. He showed up in her room one night. He told her that he was neither dead nor alive, but trapped between heaven and earth. He also told her that to maintain her magic skills, she needed to act dumb. That way, no one would suspect a thing. They'd be like, she's not a witch, no, she's way too dumb to be one. Well, eventually she was caught. In fact, she got in way more trouble because of her acting dumb. They were all like, she's fully a witch, she tried to trick us, let's kill her. At her trial in March of 1616, she confessed to using her clairvoyant powers to spy on people, and she would also use magical spells to cure illnesses. Furthermore, when they inspected her body, they found a witch's mark. She had what appeared to be a scar in the shape of bite marks on her shoulder. Later she confessed that she was bit by the devil and that was the mark that he left. She was charged with witchcraft and deceiving locals by pretending she was mute. In the end, she was executed by strangulation before having her body burned.
Should be scary enough on its own, but time to elaborate, I suppose. These manuscripts were believed to be written in the early 1900s, as their first library appearance was around the 1920s. These books originated when a Wiccan high priestess called Persephone Adrasta Irene recorded her family's spiritual history of being an American witch of Swedish and English ancestry. These manuscripts record Persephone's witchy history that she reworked all through her adult life, incorporating her mother's grimoire into them as well. The first book contains around 250 pages of spells, incantations, curses, and enchantments, as well as corresponding information on gems, planets, rites, potions, and even exorcisms. The second book includes around 150 to 200 pages of alchemy and chemistry recipes, cures, perfumes and balms, nerve tonics, and even hairspray recipes. I could use that. The first book is believed to carry the curse heavier than its counterpart, as Persephone's spells are believed in Wiccan culture to contain more power than most other records due to the embodiment of herself within them. Originally, the books belonged to Alice Montserrat, the wife of Israel Regardie, who moved to the UK in the 1920s to work with famous occult writer Aleister Crowley. If you know, you know. Later on, they both went on to work with the Golden Dawn Order and printed their works and publications as occultism raised into the modern world. Though Montserrat did little reporting on the cursed lore over these books, she did make notes as to why she and others within the order believed the curse carried some serious weight. She made a note to an inscription warning all those who read it, saying, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." This was written not only in English, but into other languages as well to ensure the reader be heavily warned to keep away. To this day, copies of the Untitled Grimoires can be bought from M. Benjamin Catt's Fine Books and Rare Manuscripts in Toronto. They still come with a high warning for all non-believers within Wiccan or pagan beliefs to shy away from them because of the cursed lore within and surrounding their pages. As tempting as it might be to acquire a copy, since that is a place I could technically travel to, I don't want to risk fate. My life is crazy enough. Trust me. Number 4, the Grand Grimoire. Yep, it's a black magic grimoire, and for reference, because I don't think I elaborated last time, a grimoire is a textbook of magic. You know, it typically includes instructions on how to create magical objects like talismans and amulets, how to perform magical spells, charms, and divination, and how to summon or invoke supernatural entities such as angels, spirits, deities, and demons. In many cases, the books themselves are believed to be imbued with magical powers, although in many cultures, other sacred texts that are not grimoires, such as the Bible, have been believed to have supernatural powers intrinsically. The only contents found in a grimoire would be information on spells, rituals, the preparations of magical tools, and lists of ingredients and their magical counterparts. In this manner, while all books of magic could be thought of as grimoires, not all magical books should be thought of as grimoires. Different editions date the specific one to 1521, 22, or 1421, but it was probably written during the early 19th century. Some experts suggest that 1702 is when the first edition may have been created as a Bibliothèque Bleue version, similar to a chapter book, since that version was published in 1750. The introductory chapter was authored by Antonio Veneziana del Rabina, who gathered his information from original writings of King Solomon. Much of the material of this grimoire derives from the Key of Solomon and Lesser Key of Solomon, which are grimoires attributed to, you guessed it, King Solomon. Known as Le Dragon Rouge, or the Red Dragon, this book contains instructions on how to summon Lucifer, or Lucifer Focal, for the purpose of forming a deal with the devil. The 19th century French occultist Eliphas Lévy, author of Dogmes et Rituels de la Haute Magie, claimed the contemporary edition of Le Dragon Rouge was a counterfeit of a true older Grand Grimoire. And I love petty historical spats. The overall work is divided into 2 books. The first book contains instructions for summoning a demon and for the construction of tools with which to force the demon to do one's bidding. Now the second book is divided further into 2 parts. The Sanctum Regnum et Secret de l'Armagie du Grand Grimoire. The Sanctum Regnum contains instructions for making a pact with the demon, allowing one to command the spirit without the tools required by book 1, but at a greater risk. Secrets contain simple spells and rituals one can employ after having performed the ritual of the first book. Some editions contain a short text between these 2 parts, known as Le Secret Magique ou Le Grand Art de Pouvoir Parler aux Morts, or in English, The Magic Secret or the Grand Art of Being Able to Speak with the Dead, which deals with necromancy. The book describes several demons as well as the rituals to summon them in order to make, a pact with them. It also details several spells for winning a lottery, talking to spirits, being loved by somebody else, making oneself invisible, and more. This book mentions 3 greater demons, which are similarly prioritized in the Grimorium Verum. Sidebar: in the English translation of the work, the demons are referenced by the more generic term of spirits, which is a term I know some modern Satanists prefer. I'm kind of partial to demons. The demons that are mentioned are the Emperor Lucifer, Prince Beelzebub, and Grand Duke Astaroth. Now this book also makes mention of 6 lesser demons, and of course I'm going to mention them all. So, we already know Lucifer Focal, Prime Minister, Satan Achia, Commander-in-Chief, Agliarept, Commandant, Fleuruti, Lieutenant General, Sagatanas, Brigadier Major, Nibiros, Marshal, and Inspector General.
Coming in at number 3, La Llorona. Is she just a legend, a ghost, or maybe a witch? Some believe La Llorona to be a powerful witch. How else would she have remained so strong in the mortal realm after her death and able to trap so many victims? The story of La Llorona is that long ago a woman named Maria married a rich man with whom she eventually had 2 children. Then their marriage hit a rough patch. Her husband spent less and less time at home, and whenever he was home he paid attention only to the children. Eventually she sees him with another woman. Enraged beyond reason, some versions claim Maria drowned her 2 children, but she immediately regretted it, crying out, "Oh my children!" Maria is sometimes said to have drowned herself afterwards. However, not everyone believes that she did drown herself. Some say her rage sent her deep into seclusion where she turned mad and began studying dark magic. She wanted revenge from what her husband had done to her, but she got lost in her grief and rage and forgot her original reason. All she could think of now was her children and the anger she felt. Now she roams the earth looking to steal children from their mothers. Children are warned not to go out in the dark, for La Llorona might snatch them, throwing them to their deaths in the flowing waters. There is one warning: if La Llorona is stalking you as one of her next victims, you will hear her crying. Once you hear this, there is little that can be done to stop her. If you were to summon her, she would not benefit you in any way. There is no bargain you could strike with her. She only knows pain and destruction. destruction. Coming in at number 2 we have Sally the Dunstable Witch. The story of Sally came from the late 19th century about an elderly woman who lived in Dunstable, Bedfordshire. She was allegedly a little old lady living alone with her cat. When perhaps out of boredom or being fed up with her life, she turned to the dark arts. Allegedly, the town found out about her practicing dark magic. They stormed her house and pulled her into the town square. They proceeded to burn her at the stake. But Sally had planned for this. Somehow, she found a way to survive the burning and took a new form. As she burned, she cursed the village and promised to get revenge. On her return, she was plaguing the church, performing her magic to make the village believe the devil was among them. Scared, they called in an exorcist. He discovered Sally and her magic. It is said that he backed her into a corner and was able to trap her. Once trapped, they buried her in the graveyard. It is said that they gave her grave a peephole, as they always wanted to tell that she was still in there. The townspeople were terrified she would once again return to terrorize them. She is still used as a tale to this day to get the children to behave, saying if they didn't, she might return. Maybe if you found her grave, you could peer in to see if she is still trapped, or maybe she's already escaped. And finally, in at number 1 we have Guahona. The Guahona is a creature in Cantabrian legend resembling a disfigured human female. She is thought to resemble one of the many forms of witches and hags of medieval Europe. She is covered from head to toe in an old thin black cloak. Her hands and feet are gnarled legs, her face is yellow and consumed by rough and hairy warts. Her eyes are tiny and bright as stars. Her aquiline nose and mouth contain a single black razor-sharp teeth, which extends long enough to be under her chin and used to suck blood. The creature only appears at night. It is unknown where she is meant to sleep during the day, although it is suspected to be hiding underground. Guahona invades homes without getting noticed and walks silently towards healthy young children to suck their blood in their sleep by sticking her tooth into their veins. She does not kill them, instead leaving them almost bloodless, so when they wake up in the morning they will be tired, pale and discolored, so looking like me. Guahona also attacks adults. Why do all witches seem to hate children? It seems if you summon any of these witches you'll be putting children in danger. Being drained of all your blood does not sound like a nice way to die. Nope.
In our 3rd spot today we have Mother Shipton. Mother Shipton, otherwise known as Ursula Sonthiel, was born in 1488 England. Legend has it that she was born during a massive thunderstorm and her mother gave birth to her in a cave. Her mother was only 15 at the time and was stuck raising Ursula in that cave by herself. That was until the monastery took her mother in and a local family took Ursula in. Eventually her mom was taken to a nunnery and they never saw each other again. Growing up, Ursula had a hard time fitting in. She had a large crooked nose, her back had a bend in it, and her legs were twisted. So right off the bat, people were like, yeah, she's a witch, just because of her appearance. In fact, people would bully her and call her hag face. Others believed her father was the devil. It didn't help that her mom refused to tell anyone who the father of her child was. So people were like, yeah, for sure, her father's the devil. Not only that, she would spend a lot of time by the cave that she was born in. Now, how did she get the name Mother Shipton? Well, eventually she went on to marry a man named Tobias Shipton, and she took his last name. She eventually did partake in witchcraft and would make magical remedies for the sick. So people called her Mother Shipton because she was like a mother to all. At one point in her life she became psychic and could see into the future. Soon after she was called the Narrenborough Witch. She made a living off of predicting and sharing the future with others. Moving on to number 2 we have Isabelle Gowdie. Isabelle Gowdie was a Scottish woman from Aldern, a village near the Scottish Highlands. She is well known in history because in 1662 she confessed to witchcraft and may have been executed. We actually don't know because there's no official record of it, so it's a mystery. Basically, during that time, if you were thought to be a witch, they would torture you until you admitted to being one, even if you weren't actually one. Well, Isabelle's case sparked a lot of interest because she admitted to being a witch willingly without torture or anything. And she went into great detail on everything that she was doing. She gave 4 separate confessions given over a 6-week period. For example, she said she made a pact with the devil and had been engaging in intercourse with him. She also said that she was part of a coven and would cast spells on the community. She claimed she put a curse on some male authority figures who she felt victimized by. She also cursed her landlord for being a pervert and put one on the local church minister. Lastly, she also admitted that she had the ability to turn into animals and that she was interacting with fairies. Over the centuries, a number of people have analyzed Isabelle and have come up with some explanations for her actions. One is that she suffered from psychosis or hallucinations, whereas others think it was a ploy to get maybe a more lenient sentence. But of course, you still have the people who believe that she was an actual witch and did everything that she admitted to doing. And in our number 1 spot today, we have La Voisin. Catherine Montvoisin, or La Voisin, was a witch that lived in France in the mid-1600s. Her witchcraft mainly comprised of mixing and creating potions, poisons, and medicines. She also would tell people their fortunes and would hold black masses where people could come and make contact with the devil through her. It started off with her just providing palm readings and advice for people, but then she realized that her clients were mainly women who were coming to her with spousal problems. A number of them wanted their husband dead, so she started creating the potions to help them kill their husbands and gain fortune. Then things started to get darker and darker. She began practicing dark magic and witchcraft. This involved her leading a number of satanic rituals in the catacombs under her home. One time she even spilt the blood of an innocent victim as a sacrifice for the devil. Eventually, Catherine was arrested for practicing witchcraft and for being involved in a number of murders. She was publicly burned at the stake in 1680.
Coming in at number 5, we have Alice Keitler. Dame Alice Keitler was the first recorded person condemned for witchcraft in Ireland. Alice was born in the county of Kilkenny in Ireland in 1263 and had been married a total of 4 times. In 1302, Alice and her second husband were accused of killing her first husband, but due to her vast wealth and involvement in money lending, these accusations were dropped. When her fourth husband John Lepar fell ill in 1324, he expressed the suspicion that he was being poisoned by his wife. After his death, the children of John and Alice's past husbands accused her of using poison and sorcery. Along with these allegations, she was also accused of denying the faith of Christ and the church, cutting up animals to sacrifice to demons at crossroads, holding secret nocturnal meetings in churches to perform black magic and undermined and overpowered the church, using sorcery and potions to control Christians, the murder of her past husband, and the possession of Robin Artisan, a lesser demon of Satan. Richard de la Drade, the Bishop of Ossory, sought to uphold the laws of the church and morality, so when the case of Alice Keitler came across him, he began an even larger project of addressing witchcraft. Richard made many attempts to have Alice arrested due to the many allegations against her and her use of witchcraft and black magic, but because of having powerful friends in the delay of the trial, Alice was able to flee, and it's believed that she fled to England but could never be found and arrested. Some of the people who were said to be working with Alice were captured and stood trial. One of them being one of her servants, Petronilla de Metz, who confessed to working with Alice in such things like committing heresy, sacrificing to demons, making love and hate potions to corrupt the church, engaging in a affair with a demon, and murdering her past husband. Alice was dark and manipulated many people around her to follow her and participate in witchcraft, and to this day it's not confirmed where she fled, but when she did, she was never seen again. In at number 4 we have Agnes Samson. Agnes Samson was a Scottish healer and a witch. She was involved in the North Berwick witch trials in the later part of the 16th century. Agnes lived in East Lothian, Scotland, and was considered to have healing powers and worked as a midwife. In the summer of 1590, King James VI was on a voyage from Denmark to Copenhagen after marrying Anne of Denmark, and on their way home a storm arose, and this made James believe the storm wasn't a coincidence. He believed that many people had unusual abilities and was greatly perplexed at the idea of witchcraft and black magic. So he began a witch hunt in Denmark, which was where the Copenhagen witch trials were started by the Danish admiral Peter Munk by King James's request. By the autumn of 1590, Scotland was aflame with witch hunts, and many of those sent to trial were questioned by the king himself. Agnes was accused of being a witch by Gilles Duncan and was arrested along with others, and she was questioned heavily about her role in the storm raising. Agnes eventually confessed, and her body was shaved to reveal a witch's mark. Agnes Samson had made a charm that she was able to raise a storm and change the winds. She confessed to causing a storm that drowned Jane Kennedy in September of 1589, when ferry boats collided during a sudden storm started by Agnes. The same charm raised the storm and weather effects that threatened the king on his return voyage from Denmark in 1590. King James actually was the one to interview Agnes and was very convinced of her guilt. She was convicted of witchcraft and was sent to be executed. She had been taken to a scaffold on Castle Hill, where she was strangled and then burnt at the stake in January of 1591. It is believed and seen by many locals that the naked ghost of a bold Agnes is said to roam in the palace of Holyrood House, haunting the people there. Coming in at number 5 we have Circe. Circe was one of the most powerful sorceresses of Greek mythology, and she was the daughter of Hecate, and was also the cousin of Zeus, the king of Olympians. Adams. She was a goddess of warning and dark moon who came to the patroness of witchcraft. She was exiled onto an island where she learned the art of magic. Circe's magical abilities came from both potion making and spell casting. She quickly gained a reputation for trickery, being ill-tempered and casting spells onto those who ridiculed and mocked her. Whoever disrespected her would be turned into an animal without the slightest effort on her behalf. It was her supernatural abilities that ultimately led to her exile on the remote island of Aie. Said to be located off the southern coastline of Italy about 100 kilometers from Rome, Circe was sentenced to this island for all of eternity as a punishment for practicing witchcraft onto Scylla. Circe had fallen in love with Flaubus, a sea god, who became infatuated with Scylla, so when Circe's advances and attempts at seduction failed miserably, she was put into a jealous rage. Circe then poisoned the water where Scylla bathed, and as a result a hideous monster was born. When it was found out it was Circe, she was banished for the rest of her life from her immortal home and family. When on the island, she was found by Odysseus, who was on a route traveling home with his men. They eventually became lovers, even though Circe killed Odysseus' men with her powers. Some say she used her powers to tempt and seduce Odysseus to stay on the island with her, and became her lover. Since the days of ancient Greece, Circe's name has been used to describe witchcraft, seduction, and deception. She's been depicted in paintings over the years, tempting Odysseus, casting spells over his men, and practicing her dark arts to lure men and punish them, along with turning her enemies into hideous animal-like creatures. In at number 4 we have Morgan Le Fay. Morgan Le Fay was a powerful enchantress in the 5th and 6th century, and she was related to King Arthur and was said to be his magical savior and protector. She was believed to be a goddess, a witch, and a sorceress. Morgan is skilled and learned what useful properties all herbs contain, so that she had the ability to cure the ailments and illnesses in the body. She also could shapeshift and was able to fly. When King Arthur was wounded in battle, he was brought to her chamber, and she was easily able to cure him. So after that, she was committed to his care from then on. Morgan also uses her healing skills with various of Arthur's knights of the Round Table, including Lancelot, who she fell in love with, and tried to seduce him, but he wasn't interested. Morgan showed Lancelot her incredible powers, and even though he had some powers as well, he was always defeated by the witch, and he described her as the most feared woman in the world. She soon is practicing more black magic and goes from helping and healing to becoming inherently evil. Morgan had the ability to communicate with the animals and sea creatures, ultimately giving her the name of the Empress of the Wilderness. When she began to demonstrate her magical powers, it's believed that Devil was her companion, and even brought Lucifer himself, disguising him as a dragon to destroy her enemies. Morgan is seen by many as a malicious and cruel sorceress, and some say that she was working to take over her King Arthur's throne through her harmful magic, scheming, and the ability to manipulate men. Most of the time, Morgan's witchcraft corresponds with those of other people, like Merlin's and the Lady of the Lakes, featuring the ability to shapeshift, illusion, and casting sleeping spells.
Starting off this countdown, we have Gilles Garnier. Now, not only was this guy a witch, but he actually used his witchy powers to conjure up a potion that would transform him into a werewolf whenever he so pleased. That's right, he was a witch and a werewolf. In October of 1572 France, that's when Garnier killed his first victim as a werewolf. He grabbed the poor girl and dragged her into a vineyard. He then proceeded to tear the flesh off of her bones with his teeth and eat it. But he was still not satisfied after, so he went and ate another victim. He struck again the following month. He took on his werewolf form and attacked a man and ate his stomach. This kept going on and on until someone caught him. Well, actually, they didn't really know it was him at first, but they claimed that they saw some weird man-like beast crouching over and eating one of the victims. That's when the authorities were like, oh shit, there's a werewolf on the loose, and then they were out looking for this weird werewolf man. While they were out looking for him, people kept going missing like crazy, and eventually he was caught. One evening, a group of workers were traveling across towns when they spotted the werewolf man. As they got closer, they saw it was Garnier and obviously reported his ass to the authorities. At trial, he confessed to having stalked and murdered at least 4 individuals, but the number was indeed higher. In the end, he was found guilty of witchcraft and lycanthropy, and he was burned at the stake. Moving on to number 4, we have Lassis Bgita. Lassis Bgita was an alleged Swedish witch back in the 1500s. In fact, she was the first woman executed for witchcraft in Sweden. Story goes that one night her and 2 men met up at a churchyard cemetery with plans to resurrect people from the dead using their witchy powers. When they they arrived at the church, Lassis used her powers to open the church doors. This involved her circling the place 3 times and then blowing into the keyhole. Magically it opened for them and they entered. While in the church they were looking for a stole. You know, the scarf type pieces of cloth that are worn by priests? That was needed in order to complete the ritual. After finally finding it, she renounced God and swore herself to the devil. Somehow, people found out that the 3 had attempted to resurrect the dead and reported them. Lassis was decapitated for being a witch, whereas the other 2 men were just fined. That's rough, man. That's rough. I'm also glad that their plan to bring back the dead didn't work. Like, imagine they would have to fight off witches and then zombies. Crazy. Starting off this countdown, we have the Wabanaki Ghost Witch. This is a terrifying witch that scared Native American tribes for centuries. According to their legend, this witch was one who practiced evil magic when they were alive, and when they died, they came back to life as an undead monster. Its name is Skadigamuch, and it craves human flesh and blood. The worst part, if it's coming for you, there's no stopping it. It will kill and devour any and everything that gets in its way. Now, during the day, this witch appears as an inactive human corpse, but as soon as night falls, the corpse comes to life and goes off searching for prey. In fact, it moves fairly quickly. It can transform itself into a ball of light and wisp around fast looking for someone to snack on. Once it finds its victim, it attacks from above, so you literally can't even see it coming. The legend also tells the story of one time this witch attacking a whole group of hunters and warriors. They were out spending the night in the forest when they were all attacked and killed one by one by this witch. I mean, it normally prefers to attack individuals who are on their own, but in this case, it must have been fairly hungry because it just devoured that whole group of men with ease. The only way to kill this witch is to burn her body right after she dies, or else she will come back to life and make your life a living hell. Coming in at number 4, we have Grilla. In Iceland, during the Christmas holidays, children have to watch themselves if they've been naughty that year. They don't find lumps of coal in their stocking. No, they run the risk of getting eaten by a nasty witch named Grilla. Grilla is depicted as a troll-like witch that lives in the mountains of Iceland. She has the ability to sense misbehaving children, and then she keeps note of all the kids who have wronged. Some depictions of her have her with hooves and 13 to 15 tails. Other depictions have her with nasty dirty nails, ears that droop to her chin, and eyes at the back of her head. Also, she's massive. You definitely don't want to get on her bad side. Did I mention that she likes stew? Stew, of course. That's where she puts the naughty children and then eats them right up. I should also mention that Grilla has been married 3 times. In total, she has 72 children. 72 children that she can send after you if you ever do her wrong. Some of these children are said to be murderers, others are said to be pranksters. With her most recent husband, she had 13 children who are called the Yule Men. They're kind of like the dwarves from Snow White, except they're evil. So the Yule Men are all gnome-like creatures that go around torturing households in their own way. They are named accordingly. For example, you have Spoon Licker that will go around licking all your spoons. Then when you go to use the spoon, you get a nasty taste in your mouth. Or you have Window Peeper. He likes to lurk outside your windows and then just watch you do stuff, you know? Sometimes he will even steal the stuff he sees. On the 13 days leading up to Christmas, these Yule lads will visit families one by one. Oh, you thought that was all? No, think again. Grilla also works alongside the Yule Cat. The Yule Cat is this monstrous beast that is said to tower above even the tallest houses. On Christmas Eve, she goes around eating So not only do you have to worry about Grilla, but you have to worry about her evil kids and her vicious cat that she can send after you as well. Moving on to number 3, we have Nailba. In 1990s, families in Bangalore were worried after hearing a story about a scary witch named Nailba. Story goes that one night a family was about to go to bed when they heard the sound of one of their family members' voice coming from outside. The father of the house opened the door about to welcome them in, but when he did, to his horrors, it was not his relative. Standing before him was an old woman, but before he could even say anything, this woman attacked him and instantly killed him. The next day, something similar happened to another family. It was late at night, they were about to go to bed when they heard a familiar voice outside. This time, the old woman attacked and killed the man with her nasty, sharp nails. After After a number of deaths in the village, everyone got spooked. They thought this was the works of a serial killer, but no, it was indeed something much worse. It was the work of this evil witch. And some believe the story to be true, and are fearful that they too will fall victim to her. In order to avoid encountering her, people would write Nailba on the door, which means come tomorrow. The witch would then see the sign and come again tomorrow to try and kill you. But as long as the words were still written on the door, you were safe for her. You know, like she'd come, oh, I'll come again tomorrow. Oh, okay, I'll come again tomorrow. You know, you get it. If not, she will try to trick you into opening your door for her, and then bam, you're dead. In our second spot today, we have La Lechuza. This is a popular witch in Mexican folklore. Legend goes that Lechuza was a woman that was caught practicing dark magic. The townsfolk were horrified and as a result had her killed. But Lechuza never fully died. She came back, taking form as a creepy bird lady, and promised she would seek revenge on the town. Now, she is a shapeshifter. She has the ability to look like a normal woman during the day, and then as a huge bird with a human's face during the night. I mean, her name literally means owl in English. So she's just this terrifying owl lady that likes to kill innocent people. In some stories, she is described as being 7 foot tall with a wingspan of 15 feet. She flies through the night hunting her prey. She often will perch on a tree branch and just watch from above. If you hear a bird screech at night, this is a bad omen. It's a sign that Lechuza is out looking for her next victim, and it could be you. Also, this witch can pretend to be a baby to trick her victims. She can disguise her voice and cry outside your door, so you're like, oh no, someone left a baby on my doorstep, and then you go outside and it's not Harry Potter left by Dumbledore. No, it's Lechuza, who will swoop down and carry you away with her sharp talons. She has the strength to carry a full grown man, so no one is safe. She's also known to attack from windows. You might be trying to sleep when all of a sudden you hear this annoying whistling or screeching noise coming from outside your window. You get so annoyed you whip the window open and bam, she'll attack you and scratch your eyes out. She's also known to run people off the road, so she's definitely someone you don't want to take on. And in our number 1 spot today we have Black Annis. Black Annis is a tall, nasty witch from English folklore. She is depicted as having a blue face with glowing eyes, long sharp teeth, and claw-like fingers, which she uses to rip the skin off of her victims. So this witch is said to haunt the countryside of Leicestershire. She waits in the woods there until she finds herself the perfect victim. She will then pounce on them, rip them open, and feast on them. She likes to drain them completely of blood by sucking it out of them, and then feasts on their insides. To make matters worse, she will keep the deceased with her, and once their skin is completely dried out, she will use the skin and sew it together to make clothes for herself. Like what the actual hell? It's giving me Buffalo Bill vibes for sure. Due to this legend, kids were told never to go into Dane Hills alone, for that's where she supposedly lives. Not only that, if you're out in the woods and hear a high-pitched howl, you know that she's close. Furthermore, if you listen carefully, sometimes you'll be able to hear her sharp teeth grinding together as she waits for her prey.
Number 3, the Black Hag. Our next witch probably has the most impressive title out of any of them, the Black Hag. That is such a cool name for a witch to have. She resides in a church called, oh god. Let me try this. The Monaster Nagal. Oh, what? You want to throw that on screen for me? Monaster Nagal. How am I supposed to say that? This is the witch's curse. I don't even know about any witchy stuff she does. She tries to get you to say this evil word and then it curses your family. I'm getting a note over here. It says that it's also called the Abbey of the Black Hag. Well, that's what we're going with. We're not calling it that other thing. I'm not doing that. The Black Abbey of the Hag, which as far as I know is the only name this church has ever gone by, was built in 1298. Wow, it's an old church. And was one of the few well-known medieval convents in old Ireland. The remains of the abbey still stand today in a secluded valley, making an already mysterious and supernatural place just that much more atmospheric. The place is called the Abbey of the Black Hag, for God's sakes. You don't name a place that unless it's pretty haunted. Sounds like it's straight out of Dishonored. And while I've got you here, Dishonored 3, when? When's that happening? Now, it's believed that the last abbess, which is a horrible word, in charge of the abbey practiced witchcraft, and in the scary way. She brought death, misfortune to the surrounding areas. Pope Martin V condemned the abbey. He was not down for witches at all. Catholic Church don't play with witches. The accused witch left to live out in the damp, deserted abbey by herself, which she probably loved because that sounds scary. Over time, her skin blackened, her hair furled, and her soul twisted, leading to the place being named the Abbey of the Black Hag. And if you can believe this, there's actually more to this story. The Count and Countess of Desmond once called the abbey home when attempting to flee their attackers, where the Countess was fatally struck by an arrow and buried by her husband, but it would not be the end of the Countess. Sightings of a ghostly figure around the ruins of the abbey were common, eventually leading to someone digging up worn-out finger bones. And it's said now that a woman's panicked shrieking can be heard in the early hours around the abbey. Number 2, the Blair Witch. Perhaps one of the most pervasive witches in pop culture after the Wicked Witch of the West, the scourge of Maryland, the Blair Witch. Perhaps you saw the very successful 1999 documentary regarding her legend, or maybe you saw one of the 2 middling sequels. According to legends, she haunts the Black Hills Forest near the town of Burkittsville, Maryland. The local folklore states that in the 18th century, a woman named Ellie Kedward was accused of practicing witchcraft. She was chased and exiled out of the township of Blair and condemned to live in the woods, hence the Blair Witch. It's believed that she died out in the surrounding forests in the harsh winter of 1785, but it's also said that she placed a curse on the town moments before her death, vowing to seek revenge on the townspeople and their descendants for generations. And not to split hairs here, but that does actually kind of sound like she was a witch. I'm not saying it was justified in exiling a woman out of her town, just that placing a hex on a town definitely sounds like witchcraft, and I can understand where they were coming from. I'm just trying to understand the scenario, okay? I'm divorced from it. I'm not part of it. I'm just trying to understand it. From here, the legends of Kedward grew into the larger-than-life figure, the Blair Witch. Various disturbing events were attributed to the Blair Witch. Mysterious disappearances, people being lured away into the woods, supernatural phenomena, camera crews disappearing in forests, reports of finding strange hex bags in the surrounding woods filled with strange runes and symbols and remnants of people, hair, teeth, for her to perform wicked rituals. Now, it goes without saying, unless you firmly believed the marketing campaign of the 1999 film, the Blair Witch Project is obviously a movie. While they say it's based on the real story of Ellie Kedward, there is no record of a Blair Township ever having existed. Almost certainly, the Blair Witch's story is inspired in large swaths by the Bell Witch, who we talked about earlier. Although in a kind of unique case, back in the day when the Blair Witch did come out, its marketing was so effective, and in this sort of like pre-early internet area, there were several people who did think it was real. It was a cast of completely unknown actors by a team no one had ever heard of. And on some level, I don't know, maybe to get esoteric with it, what makes an urban legend real? Just us believing in it, right? Do you believe the other 4 stories I've told you more? They're no less fictional. My only source was the internet for all of those. So, I'm just saying, open mind. Number 1, La Bruja de Kashish. And our final witch for today is going to be La Bruja de Kashish, a well-known urban legend from Peru, specifically from the coastal town of Kashish near the city of Ica. The legend revolves around a reputed witch who lived during the colonial era. According to legend, La Bruja de Kashish was an enigmatic woman with exceptional powers and knowledge of witchcraft. She was believed to possess both healing abilities and the abilities to cast curses. She multi-specced. It was said that she used various herbs, potions, and rituals to perform her magic. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of this legend is this belief that La Bruja de Kashish had a physical deformity, specifically a hunchback. And if there's one thing we love in an urban legend, it's a bit of a physical deformity. It makes it that much more believable and scary. Because someone conventionally unattractive is way scarier than not. Don't blame me, blame our Western views on beauty. I didn't write them, I just perpetuate them. Over time, the legend of La Bruja de Kashish became intertwined with the history and culture of the town of Kashish. Local residents and visitors began associating certain landmarks and natural phenomena with their presence. For example, there's a famous gnarled and twisted tree called the Witch's Tree that is said to have been her gathering place. Today, Kashish has embraced the legend of La Bruja de Kashish as part of its heritage. The town has a statue of the witch, and there are various festivals and events dedicated to her, and I guarantee you no party goes even half as hard as a party celebrating a local witch. Oh my god, imagine the cauldrons do. The legend has also become a popular tourist attraction, drawing visitors who are interested in the occult, folklore, and statues.
Starting off this countdown, we have the West Branch Witch. This witch is pretty famous in Ohio. So legend goes that there's this witch that many people have encountered in West Branch State Park. This witch tends to dress head to toe in all black. The first appearance was reported in 1960 by a man named B.A. Evans. He recently purchased a piece of land and later discovered a small cemetery on it. The cemetery contained 7 gravestones surrounded by a 40-inch wall. The gravestones are apparently from a family named the Elliots. Now, the headstone that gets the most attention is that of Clemenza. Clemenza was apparently killed by a group of townspeople after being accused of being a witch. As a result, she was pressed to death. A wooden board was placed on her, and then on top was piled with stones until, her body was crushed by the weight. To this day, her grave is marked by a pile of stones that rests on top of it. Now it's said that she haunts the graveyard and the surrounding area. In fact, on her graveyard is a curse that says, and I quote, "Remember youth as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so must you be. Prepare for death and follow me." Now, if you read it out loud by her grave, she will apparently chase you away. Apparently, this whole legend is real though, and there is a curse upon her grave. One night, a group of hooligans took stones from her grave, which, hello, you're not supposed to do. Well, on the car ride home, they got into a deadly car accident and everyone in the car died except for one boy. That was the one boy who didn't take a stone from her grave. Had he done so, he wouldn't be here today. So, that is absolutely horrifying. No thanks. Moving on at number 4, we have Moll Dyer. Legend goes that Moll Dyer was a witch that lived in Maryland in the 17th century. But there are no historical records of her existence, so it might have just been a legend passed down from generation to generation. Either way, it's quite creepy. So the story takes place during a brutal winter in 1697. During this winter, there wasn't a lot of food available. In fact, many residents sadly passed away from starvation. Then there was Moll Dyer. She lived basically isolated from the community. Some say she wanted it that way since she was on the run after killing her husband. Well, one cold winter night, a group of vigilantes were like, let's just take her down. So they burnt her house down and chased her around with pitchforks, calling her a witch. Moll did manage to escape, but kept running until she fell upon a large boulder. She ultimately froze to death on that boulder. Several days later, a young boy found her corpse. Her body was frozen with one of her hands on the boulder, the other outstretched up towards the sky. Some say she froze to death, putting a curse on her tormentors and the town. What's scary is that the rock that she died on is still on display in this town. In fact, her handprint is imprinted onto the rock for eternity, and Moll Dyer's curse is still effective to this day. All men responsible for her death and their ancestors will suffer for the rest of their lives. They will be cursed with bad luck. In fact, it's said that her tormentors got sick and some passed away. Others had their land become barren and their livestock died. All from the curse that Moll Dyer put on them.
Third place, Ray Sherwood, the last convicted witch of Virginia. Also known as the Witch of Pungo, she was born in 1660 to carpenter John White and his wife Susan, and married her husband, farmer James Sherwood, in 1680, whom she birthed 3 sons with. Grace was a renowned healer, growing her own herbs on their land, also acting as a midwife. While no official paintings or drawings of her exist, she is described as very attractive and tall, with a sense of humor. She was known to wear trousers instead of dresses while doing yard work, something almost unheard of at the time. The first accusation of wrongdoing against her came in 1697, when Richard Capps accused her of using a spell to end the life of his bull, of which the court could not make a decision. Grace and her husband filed a countersuit, which was settled out of court. In 1698, Grace was then accused by neighbor John Gisborne of enchanting his pigs and cotton crop. No court action was taken this time, and another countersuit by the Sherwoods went nowhere. In that same year, Elizabeth Barnes alleged that Grace had taken the form of a black cat, entered the Barnes' home, jumped over her bed, whipped her, and left through the keyhole. The allegations went nowhere. Same for the countersuit, leaving the Sherwood couple to pay court fees for the 3rd time. After her husband's death in 1701, Grace managed to dodge further allegations until 1705, when she got into a fight with neighbor Elizabeth Hill. She sued Elizabeth and her husband for battery and was awarded damages of 20 shillings, so roughly the equivalent to 170 Canadian dollars today. In March, the Princess and County Justices assembled 2 juries, both made up of women, with the first being ordered to search Elizabeth's home for wax or baked items that might indicate she was a witch. Led by Elizabeth Hill herself, Grace was examined by the second jury of 12 ancient and knowing women, appointed to look for markings on her body that might be brands of the devil. And they discovered 2 marks not like theirs or like those of any other woman known to them. On July 5th, the justices ordered a trial by ducking to take place. If Grace were to sink, she would be deemed innocent. If she were to float and survive, she would be declared as guilty and imprisoned. Around 10 a.m. on July 10th, she was taken down a dirt lane now known as Witch Duck Road to a plantation near the mouth of the Lynnhaven River. The event attracted people from all over the colony, who began to shout, "Duck the witch!" It is believed that her right thumb was bound to her left big toe and her left thumb to her right big toe, and then she was flung into the water where she quickly floated to the surface. The sheriff then tied a 13-pound Bible around her neck, causing her to sink, but she untied herself and returned to the surface, cementing her status as a witch. She was then imprisoned for 8 years and lived quietly until her death in 1740. According to legend, her sons placed her body near the fireplace, and a wind came down the chimney, with her corpse disappearing amongst the embers. The only clue left behind was a cloven hoofprint. Stories about the devil taking her body, unnatural storms, and loitering black cats quickly arose after her death, and local men ended the life of every feline they could find. This widespread elimination of cats is believed to have caused the infestation of rats and mice in 1743. In our second place position, we're traveling over to 1662 Scotland, where Isabel Gowdie, housewife to John Gilbert, residents of the Aldern region, and that's about all we know of her personal life. It is believed that she was tortured before her confession. Methods used at the time included the use of thumb screws, foot roasting, witch pricking to test for a devil's mark, sleep deprivation, or isolation with food and water restrictions. Ugh. The specific details of the original accusation or reason for her confession are unknown, but are believed to be part of a conspiracy to torment the local minister, Harry Forbes, who was a zealous extremist who had a fear of witchcraft. And for a woman who would not have been taught to read or write, she was extremely eloquent. Her first confession described an encounter with the devil in the church at night, where she renounced her baptism and the devil put his mark on her shoulder before sucking her blood from it. Other meetings took place at several locations, where she recounted having sexual intercourse with the devil, who she described as a very cold and rough but great man. She detailed his appearance as having forked and cloven feet that were sometimes covered with shoes or boots. Details were given of taking a child's body from a grave and spoiling crops, along with information about covens and where they danced. The coven ate and drank the best of food at houses they reached by flying through the air on magical horses and entered through the windows, where they were entertained by the Queen of the Fairies in her home at Downey Hill, which was filled with water bowls that frightened Isabel. She claimed to have made clay figures of the male offspring of the owner of her land to cause them suffering or death, and that she had assumed the form of a jackdaw bird with other members of the coven who had transformed into animals like cats and hares. Some parts of her testimony, such as her description of the king and queen of the fairies, has been cut short when the notaries have just noted, etc., because they were unable to keep pace with the volume of information being narrated to them. A little over 2 weeks later, on May 3rd, Isabel's second confession was transcribed. She expanded on details about the coven by providing the nicknames of its members and as many of the spirits that waited on them as she could remember, including her own servant spirit, whom she called Red River, who dressed all in black. Claims included once again having the ability to transform into animals, with the individual chance used supplied. Over the duration of all of her confessions, a total of 27 benevolent or malevolent chants were given, more than in any other British witchcraft case. She testified that the devil handmade elf arrows that were then enhanced by small, roughly spoken elf boys. The devil allocated a number of arrows to each coven member with instructions that they were to be fired in his name. If the intended target, human or animal, was touched by the arrow, she claimed that they would pass, even if wearing protective armor. Spells used to inflict illness and torment on local minister Harry Forbes were also described. On May 15th, Isabel was brought before her interrogators for a third time. Same as her first 2 confessions, the transcript begins by detailing her pact with the devil. Taking the information she provided previously about the elf arrows a step further, she revealed the names of those whose lives she had ended, along with supplying names of other coven members with details of who they had unalived. She described an instance where the the devil had sent her to run an errand disguised as a hare, and how, while in that form, she was chased by a pack of dogs until she was able to utter the chant to transform herself back into a human. She mentioned that while dogs could not kill her in that disguise, any marks sustained would still show after returning to human form. Descriptions of dining with the devil, along with salacious details concerning sexual relations with said devil, and broad characteristics of his were chronicled. The fourth and final confession on May 27th was mainly to confirm the 3 previous testimonies and an attempt to elicit more information about the members of the coven. After the 6 weeks that it took to record her testimonies, the panel of interrogators believed they had enough proof to request a trial from the Privy Council, which was granted. While there is no official record of the exact trial outcome, it is believed that Isabelle would have been found guilty and, following the verdict, would have been transported by cart to Gallows Hill, where she would have been subject to a public strangulation and burning. The posthumous burning to ensure that she couldn't haunt the community from beyond her grave. Granted, locals to the area claim that she is the Green Lady that can be seen haunting them to this day. Finally, in first place, we have the only male witch on this list, Grigori Rasputin. Close family friend of the last royal Russian family, he was originally introduced to them as a faith healer who could aid their only son, Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. A self-described mystic and holy man, he was a figure of much debate amongst the royal court, with some describing him as a visionary and prophet, others as a charlatan and scam artist. Historians believe that his scandalous reputation and influence over the Romanovs helped to discredit and overthrow the family. Having taken many pilgrimages to holy monasteries, he developed a reputation as a reverent holy man, gaining a small circle of followers who believed in his miracles, and began leading private prayer meetings, much to the scorn and suspicion of villagers and priests. It was rumored that female followers were ceremonially washing him before each meeting, that the group sang strange songs, and even that they had joined a religious sect whose rituals were rumored to include self-flagellation and sexual orgies. Word of Rasputin's activity and charisma began to spread in Siberia during the early 1900s, where he developed many friendships with high-ranking religious leaders, eventually leading to his introduction to the royal family. It's not certain when Rasputin first acted as Alexei's healer, with the earliest record on date being when he was summoned by Alexandra to pray for Alexei when he had an internal hemorrhage in the spring of 1907, with the young royal healing by the next morning. Due to his closeness with the family, Rasputin was allowed intimate access in situations that governesses to the children described as inappropriate. One governess in particular was released from her position simply for voicing her concerns about Rasputin being allowed around the children while they were clad in nothing but their nightgown. Another of the nursery governesses claimed in the spring of 1910 that she was seduced into sexual acts against her will by Rasputin, having originally been a devotee of him but was later disillusioned. The empress refused to believe her and said that everything Rasputin does is holy, later dismissing the governess. It was whispered in society that Rasputin had seduced not only the Tsarina but also the 4 young Grand Duchesses. Rasputin had released passionate letters written to him by the Tsarina and the 4 young Grand Duchesses that, throughout society, fueled the rumors. In 1916, a group of nobles led by Prince Felix Yusupov banded together, deciding to assassinate the holy man for his influence over Alexandria and her family. It is said that the prince invited Rasputin to his place shortly after midnight, where he offered the man tea and cakes, which had been laced with cyanide. Rasputin initially refused the cakes, but then began to eat them, and to Felix's surprise, appeared unaffected by the poison. Rasputin then asked for wine, which had also been poisoned, and drank 3 glasses, but still showed no sign of distress. At around 2:30 in the morning, Felix excused himself to go upstairs, where his fellow conspirators were waiting. He grabbed a revolver and returned to the basement, telling Rasputin that he'd better look at the crucifix and say a prayer, referring to the crucifix in the room, and then shot him once in the chest. Rasputin leapt up from the bullet and attacked Felix, who freed himself with some effort and fled upstairs. Rasputin then followed Felix outdoors, where he was shot once again and collapsed into a snowbank. The group of men then wrapped his body in cloth, drove it to the Petrovsky Bridge, and dropped it into the Malaya Nevka River.
Moving on at number 3, we have Lilith. Now, the description of Lilith varies depending on your beliefs. In Jewish folklore, Lilith is a female demon. In Luciferian witchcraft and Luciferianism, Lilith is described as the consort of Samael. Other people believe that she is the wife of Satan, or that Lilith was the first wife of Adam. But she wasn't that obedient to him, and Adam didn't like that, so Lilith left. Then God made Eve, who was more obedient. Lilith became jealous and turned into the snake that made Eve take a bite from the apple. The two were banished from the Garden of Eden, and Lilith turned into a demon, her main goal to get revenge on all men. Then you have the people that believe Lilith is a child-killing witch. She wasn't able to conceive, so she was jealous of pregnant women and would go around killing them or stealing their babies. In this case, we are looking at the version in which Lilith is a witch. obviously. In this case, Lilith is working alongside Satan to do his dark bidding for him. Their deal is that if she's with him, then she will work for him. But she's not always obedient, in fact she has gotten frisky with other men. In the TV series Supernatural, Lilith is depicted as a white-eyed powerful demon. She is said to be the first human that made a deal with Satan and promised to serve him. As a result, she became the first demon. In the chilling adventures of Sabrina, we end up finding out that one of the characters, Miss Wardwell, is actually Lilith. She is referred to as Satan's concubine and the mother of demons, and of course, she's a witch. In fact, she is said to be the first witch in existence. She made a deal with Satan, or the Dark Lord. According to her story, she was wandering the wasteland aimlessly when she encountered Lucifer, the fallen angel. She made a deal to heal the wounds caused by the loss of his wings, if he in return helped her. She then pledged allegiance to him and became his handmaiden. In the end, Lilith wants to become his queen, which is why she goes to the extreme lengths to do whatever he tells her to do. Moving on to number 2, we have Sarah Good. Now, if you have seen the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix, then chances are you might be a little familiar with this story. The movie was loosely based off of the real witch, Sarah Good, but in the movie they changed her name to Sarah Fear. So Sarah was one of the first 3 women that were accused of witchcraft. It was her, Sarah Osborne, and Tatuba. These 2 other ladies were said to be real witches, and when they were accused, they brought forth Sarah Good's name, saying that she was a witch too. Little tattletalers. The townspeople were quick to believe this because Sarah never attended church. She lacked self-discipline and self-control, and she was 38, but apparently she looked like she was 70. That combined with the other ladies' testimonies had everyone against her. In fact, apparently when she was brought in front of the court, a number of witnesses began to twitch and rock back and forth and moan. So they were all like, damn, she's definitely a witch. Look at what she's doing to the people that accused her of being one. Not only that, but her own husband and daughter even admitted to Sarah being a witch as well. And then things kept getting worse and worse for her. At one point in her trial, one of the accusers started acting out and claimed that Sarah attacked her with a knife. In the end, of course, she was found guilty of witchcraft and was sentenced to death. But just before her death, she made a deal with the devil to curse a priest. She said, and I quote, "I am no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take my life, God will give you blood to drink." Now when she died, apparently the priest and his land both became cursed, just like Sarah claimed it would. To this day, it's said that Sarah continues to haunt the town, searching for those that have wronged her. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Bowness Witches. In 1679 in Bowness, Scotland, a number of women were accused of being witches. These women were Annabelle Thompson, Margaret Pringle, Margaret Hamilton, Bessie Yicker, and another woman named Margaret Hamilton. Now during this time, the hype and fear of witches was dying down. So people were shocked that out of nowhere 5 women were being accused. But rumor has it these women had renounced their baptisms and had been in contact with the devil on a number of occasions. They apparently had eaten, drank, danced, and had intercourse with the devil. Annabelle Thompson even admitted that she had made a deal with the devil for a better life. She had been widowed twice, and so she turned to the devil for help, and in return she would be loyal to him. She then invited the other women to come over and do all these things with the devil with her. The women then apparently formed a demonic pact with each other and Satan. One of the Margaret Hamiltons also admitted that she had met the devil. She claimed that the devil came to her in the form of a black dog. And she said that she was his servant for 3 decades already. And another was accused of using her witch magic to help get wealth. As a result, all the witches were found guilty and were strangled at the stake before being burned to ashes.